We're talking about chelation therapy. And EDTA and chemicals like that, they're all manufactured in a laboratory. There's nothing natural about them. But the EDTA, which is a particular type of amino acid, a protein, is found in vinegar. Now, if you're going to eat vinegar to help get rid of plaque, if you have them in your arteries, veins, capillaries, anywhere like that, you need to take a small amount because it does cause a mineral imbalance. So it can cause bleeding, it can cause internal bleeding, stuff like that. Of course, it doesn't have the side effects and the toxicity that the EDTA and the other chemicals have, but it will cause a mineral imbalance, a mineral loss. It could cause osteoporosis, damaging and a weakening of your cellular structure by demineralization. So you have to make sure that you're eating enough cheese. And remember, raw cheese, when it's raw, is not digestible. It acts as a sponge, so as you eat it, it starts in the mouth. It passes down through your entire alimentary canal. It will act as a magnet. It will draw the poisons out of your lymphatic system, your urological fluid, and your bloodstream as those pass through and weave through the entire digestive tract. So the raw cheese will act as a magnet, draw the poisons, heavy metals, other toxins out of those three serums, and hold it like a sponge and pass it out in the feces. Cooked cheese, pasteurized cheese will not do that because it's fractionated. So it'll absorb those toxins and then reabsorb into the body. So you'll just keep recycling it. So it has to be raw cheeses. Salt causes greater imbalances, so it has to be a non-salted cheese. When you want to digest the minerals in the fats and the proteins in the cheese, you have to eat it with a little honey. Provide the enzymes that are missing in it. So if you want a good mineral supplement, a good calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, concentrated supplement, cheese is it, but you have to have a tiny bit of honey with the cheese, and they have to be either mixed in something like a cheesecake, or you have to mix the honey and the cheese together in the mouth. Then you will absorb those minerals and other things. Yes?
For someone that's diabetic or has blood sugar issues, using a purely raw source...
Unheated honey. Unheated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Raw agave?
Yeah. No, agave is not. It's a process. Yeah.
I've found someone and they are positive it's purely raw.
Not.
No?
No. If they derive it themselves, and they assure me of that with lawsuit, damage and loss of their business, I'll go for it. Otherwise, it isn't. It isn't stable. Agave is not stable. So it has to be totally unheated honey. But it's the ratio of 1 tablespoon of cheese to 1/4 teaspoon of honey. That little amount of honey. If you put too much honey in there, it's going to unstabilize the mineral balance, and it won't help remineralize your bones and your cellular walls. So the vinegar will help go in and just rip things apart. If you want an example of that, let plaque build up on your teeth for about 10 days, and then use a little bit of coconut cream with a tiny bit of vinegar and a little clay, and it'll dissolve that plaque in a minute, about 1 minute. That's thick all the way down deep. So that's also, if you use a good toothbrush, with an angle on it, get down into the gums, the clay will take the vinegar down into it, will dissolve deep plaque, so you don't have to have your teeth scraped, and then it'll rise out of the gums, and then the pockets will fill. So you can refill the pockets that way. Any questions about that?
The formula again is clay, mineral water, and vinegar?
No, clay, coconut cream, and vinegar. And the ratio, coconut cream is about 1 tablespoon of coconut cream, about a half a teaspoon of vinegar, and clay. And the clay, just enough to thicken it a little bit. But remember, when you put the coconut cream and the vinegar together, it's going to foam up a little bit. So make sure you've got a large enough vessel to put it in. I use a little 1 ounce royal jelly jar, and then I'll use it for a couple of weeks. I'll just dip my toothbrush in there. Yeah. Anybody who's had heavy tetracycline or a like antibiotic and wants to have their teeth whitened, you can forget about it, because the molds grow into the nerve, and it's outward. That's what these teeth are. These are tetracycline damaged, and they're too small to have them capped, so I'll just have to live with more dark teeth. And you just can't, there's no way, because it's in the nerve, and the nerves dump the toxins because molds eat metals, so they break them down into a finer substance, a finer molecule. So when it leaves the nerves and gets into the tubules, and the tubules feed the dentine, it turns the whole tooth colored. So, yes?
In terms of the osteoporosis and the vinegar, how much should you be careful about ingesting before? Because if I already have osteoporosis, because I've been doing the vinegar for a lot of...
Well, it's not a good idea to have any more than, let's say, a half a teaspoon of vinegar a day, and have it in a vegetable juice. It's a good carrier for it through the arteries and veins to break up the plaque. If you put it in milk, not likely to get into the glands and organs. And if you have a buildup there, or you have kidney stones or bladder stones, then the vinegar and milk is a good vehicle. That's a good combination to get to the kidneys and bladder. Of course, the vinegar carried in the juice will get to the kidney and bladder too, if you have stones to break them up, if you need to break up the stones. If you have a stone like I had that grew since I was 3 years old, that was concentrated from mercury from tetanus shots and other vaccines when I was an infant, it made a solid steel ball in the center of a stone that was this long and this wide, the longest one that all of these urologists had ever seen. Of course, it had grown for 54 years, so it was huge. That's not going to dissolve with vinegar. You know, that took... When the urologist said it, he said, I can, dissolve that in 20 minutes. It took him an hour and 40 minutes because it was solid metal inside, mainly mercury. So, and I had to deal with those poisons that were dispersed throughout my body for a couple of years. So if you have that kind of a stone, it's been a very long time developing, and it's concentrated mercury, it's not likely the vinegar is going to work for that. But your common stones that are formed from cooked foods that you've eaten, whether it's you ate the cooked foods 40, 50, 60 years ago, when you're detoxifying and they collect and they bind together, they can actually grow like a normal crystal. They can get larger and larger. So vinegar helps prevent that kind of things, but no more than a half a teaspoon a day. For some people who've been on a raw diet for a very long time, no more than a quarter a teaspoon a day. Raw and pasteurized apple cider vinegar. Yeah. That's the only one that has a lot of EDTA in it. Natural EDTA, not a synthetic. Yes?
Do you think that chelation is a cure for heart disease?
It is, if it's a natural chelation. Now, the first time I was introduced into chelation therapy was in 1970. And I was working at some health food store on Melrose Avenue. And the fellow started doing EDTA in an alternative environment, and his skin turned tissue paper thin, and he was dead in a year and a half. from doing that because it just thinned the walls internally and externally. And that's the problem with it. Even vinegar will do that.
Well, did he have heart disease?
Yeah, he had heart disease.
But there are doctors that they do it intravenously in their office.
Yep.
And I know people that go 2 or 3 times a week. And
Yep.
supposedly this way they avoid a bypass.
They may avoid a bypass, but then they weaken the heart and the other tissues over the long run. So then what you have is bleeding. Now, I did an experiment this weekend just to see how sensitive I was with it, and I mixed a tablespoon of vinegar with a tablespoon of honey and some vegetable juice. And I had that, and I was in my hot tub last night and had a pretty nasty nosebleed. Probably lost about 3 tablespoons of blood. And I'm in that hot tub a lot in the winter, this time if I'm home, and not traveling. And I've never had a nosebleed like that, so, from being in a hot tub. But that's what vinegar can do very readily, very quickly. So it was like 24 hours or 36 hours since I had the vinegar and the honey. So it works very rapidly. The only reason I'm experimenting was because when I was in my early 20s, my carotid artery here was plaqued, and it has the same plaque. It's never been removed. So I thought that I'm healthy enough now to start ripping that apart, dissolving it. So I know it's worked with, EDTA, the natural source is vinegar. So it does work. You can tell by the, using it on your teeth and heavy plaque. You can put it on, if you've got a mineral buildup from well water, put the vinegar on there, and it'll dissolve it readily. If you put vinegar and honey on there, it'll dissolve it even into a little cream. It'll almost make a cream substance out of it, less likely to drop off and crystallize. That's why I suggest that if you're going to use the vinegar, you put it with coconut cream or vegetable juice that has some fats in it, so when it dissolves it won't break off in chunks and cause an aneurysm in your brain or somewhere else.
What about putting a vinegar on your salad?
Well, you can do that, but I don't eat salads. My vegetable juice is my salad.
Oh, okay.
So remember, when you eat a salad, it's whole cellulose. We don't have the digestive tract to break that down. So as the cellulose is passing through the digestive tract, it's going to be constantly secreting alkaline fluids. What is the environment for our intestines? It's an acid bacteria and acid enzyme environment and digestive juices. So if you neutralize that, you're not going to digest your milk or your meats. And that's basically the diet, and your eggs. And that's basically the diet. So whole vegetables is not a good thing to eat. Cucumber is different. It's not a vegetable. It's a bland fruit. And that cellulose in a cucumber is very different. There's a lot of collagen precursors in it. So it will help the skin. It'll help make your skin a lot better. It'll help hydrate it properly, keep it soft and smooth and healthy. So what you can do if you have cucumber in your juice, you can blend into a puree some of that cucumber and then mix it with the rest of your vegetable juice. The vegetables that you do juice, you separate the pulp from the juice. Yes?
What do you think of blend salads like Dr. Chris?
It's a terrible thing. The cellulose molecule has to be broken down infinitely small. And it can do that in a herbivore's stomach, or a ruminated animal. It takes 48 hours. Our food passes through in 24 hours. They have 60,000 times more enzymes to disassemble the cellulose molecule. Plus they chew, they swallow, they regurgitate, chew, swallow, and I don't see anybody here doing that. Taking, having a bowel movement with the same food that they ate 48 hours later is 24 hours later. So again, what it does is it calls all that alkalinity because you've got the pulp. If you want an example of that, even the good juicers like a Green Star juicer or any of the Green Gold juicers, that removes a lot of pulp. And if you don't filter it, you're going to get still a lot of pulp in there. And if your bowel movement is green, that tells you how much cellulose is still passing through, and you may need to filter it some more if you're not digesting your meats and your dairy properly. So you may need to filter your vegetable juice further and get as much pulp out of it as you can. Some people who have a very, very dark, toxic intestinal tract can use that little bit of pulp. But a preferable pulp would be coconut pulp, coconut fiber pulp. So when you juice the coconut, you don't strain the coconut cream, and there's always a little pulp in it. And I've asked James not to filter that at Rawson, so that we do get some of that fiber, and it helps clean the intestinal tract of that toxicity that is severely embedded in the intestinal walls. Now, you get a lot of this stuff about there's plaque, on the entire bowel wall. I don't know where that imagination has come from. It isn't like teeth get plaque, and that's how they describe it. Because every autopsy I've ever done on an animal, and those that I've seen on humans, none of them are like that. I mean, some of those the intestinal walls are this thick in edema and toxicity, but there's no plaque, except in areas where there's severe scarring. And then there will be some plaque on the scarring. But normally, plaquing does not really occur. That's a fictitious imagination of somebody who wants to scare the hell out of you, And colonics are never good. They rob you of E. coli, and E. coli is the final stage of digestion. And they are responsible for the final stage of digestion, the fats and the proteins, to make them into that finite molecule to feed the brain and the nervous system and to release all the B vitamins from your protein, whether it's meat or dairy. They are said to even manufacture in their excrement, which is called a verotoxin. The medical profession, scientists, of course, come up with naming something as a toxin that they want you to be afraid of. But the verotoxin, according to the University of Toronto, in association with the Children's Hospital of Toronto, have found that the verotoxin from E. coli completely dissolves human brain tumors in 2 to 5 days. So cancerous, malignant brain tumors in 2 to 5 days. Pardon? Fasting's not good, like I said in my book. But let me finish with that. If you got a question, if it's not on point, what I'm talking about, you save your question when I come around, because I'm going to start pretty soon and going around. I just wanted to get this EDTA and this digestive thing resolved.
I just want to ask you about the cucumber. Are you suggesting that instead of putting that through the juicer, we blend the cucumber?
You blend it, yeah. What you do is you take your cucumber, you peel it. I don't care if it's organic. If you've grown it, don't peel it. But a lot of people say, but all the nutrients are in the peel. Yeah, if you're a cow or a goat or a sheep, you'll be able to digest it. Otherwise, you won't. And you can juice the pulp all day, and you're not going to get much of anything out of that skin. And the FDA allows them to call organic cucumbers cucumbers that have been waxed with a beeswax that has 15% paraffin in it, and that's motor oil. So and it's kerosene based, so it's not a good healthy substance. So always peel your cucumbers unless you've grown them yourself. And then what you do is you juice your other juice, and then you put you peel and slice your cucumbers, put them in a jar with some of your vegetable juice, so there's not much air space in there, and blend it, and there you have your vegetable juice with the collagen precursor cucumber pulp in it. Okay? So we're going to start going around now. We're going to ask. You're going to ask questions. If somebody doesn't hear the question, I'll repeat it, but I'm not going to repeat it unless somebody hasn't heard it. So if somebody asks a question and you didn't hear it, just raise your hand. I'll look around quickly after I hear the question, and if it needs repeating, I will repeat it. If not, won't. Yes.
Just on the point you're already on regarding the filtering of the green light juicer. Are those the filters that come with it? Because there's two that come with it that are metal.
No, that's the normal sieve, but you have to filter it again. Some people use a very, very fine meshed metallic, stainless steel sieve. Other people will use a cheesecloth or a T-shirt. What do they call that? What kind of weave is that? Terra? Whatever it is.
Terry cloth?
Like a terry cloth weave, and filter it through, and then squeeze what juice remains in the fabric. Somebody coming up? Okay, so we're going to get started. You have a question?
Yeah, about fasting.
Fasting. Okay, the problem with fasting, you go 5 hours without eating, the protein level drops out in the blood. What happens then? Your red blood cells become cannibalistic. They eat each other. If you go 8 hours sleeping without eating, you've eaten 6 tablespoons of red blood cells. So what happens? People wake up after 8 hours unrested unless they have a lot of adrenaline pumping in their systems, and they go for coffee as a remedy. Who ever heard of coffee as a remedy for anemia? Pretty stupid, isn't it? So it's a good idea to wake during the night. Do not sleep 8 hours. If you're a person who's hyperactive, creates a lot of physically active hormones like testosterone, adrenaline, estrogen that are good for physical energy. If you produce those, then only sleep 3 hours. Wake up after 3 hours, set your alarm, wake up after 3 hours, sleep 5 hours. Even those people aren't rested after 3 hours except for me. And I usually sleep about 3-4 hours a night, and that's it. But I'll take, 1 or 2 cat naps, 10 to 15 minutes a day, to fill out what I need. But I can go all day long and all night long and just go on about 4.5 hours sleep a day, period. But other people wake, who have a high energy level, wake after 3 hours, 4 hours maximum, have, milk, a couple of eggs, half a milkshake or a small amount of food, and go back to sleep for 4 or 5 hours. And then you get all the rest you need, but your blood won't be eating itself, and causing anemia. If you fast, that's fasting beyond 5 hours, and other people are talking about fasting for days, 24 hours, weeks. I fasted up to 42 days. Insane. It took me 3 years to recover. Being a raw fooder, so not a good thing to do.
So what's the regime at night? Did you say milk?
It could be milk, it could be eating anything with protein in it. It could be meat.
Why not eggs?
Eggs?
I said eggs. I said eggs.
I thought you told me not to do eggs.
That's you. Well, if you want some milkshake, but I don't want you eating eggs alone at night.
And milkshake would be?
Milkshake is milk and honey and egg.
That's cool.
Yeah. And what I tell people to do so they're not eating too much food, or if they're very skinny and they need to gain a lot of weight. To me, skinny is my size, but I'm not really skinny. I'm 21% body fat. And let's see, he's about probably 22% body fat. He's only 1% more than I. Why don't I look it? Why do I look like somebody, an athlete that has 10%? Because fat molecules, when they're raw, are very tiny. Fat molecules that have been cooked swell 10 to 50 times their normal size. I've been eating raw foods, no raw cooked fats, since 1972. So all of the fat in my body, it takes 40 years, all of the fat in my body is new, raw molecules, tiny. So I'm fat, I just don't look it. And that's the way you get to be if you're on this diet. I've got women that have been on the diet 17, 18 years. They're 27% body fat, but they're slender. That's what all women dream of. And you can have it on this diet, you just have to be patient. It takes 12, 17 years. You'll never look fat again, but you'll have all the fat to be calm and happy. Okay. You have a question?
I have a couple of distinct questions.
We're only going to be able to hit one, so pick out your favorite.
All right. In cancerous things, I've had it in the past, basal cell carcinoma, and I had the surgery to take it off. And every now and then I feel like there's a little thing coming up, and I just stress it, but I just have to take it off. But is there anything else you can recommend to treat
Well,
skin cancer?
what I've been experimenting with over the last 2 years is using bone marrow, which has a lot of stem cells that helps regrow healthy tissue, but it won't grow cancer cells to allow dead cells to collect. And remember, I said in my book, cancer is nothing other than the body's inability to dissolve dead cells, and it collects them in little stations, whether it's a wart, which is a benign tumor, or a cancerous carcinoma of the skin, where you've got cancer cells on there drawing more and more dead cells to the area. Now, a cancer cell is not a bad guy. It's a very beneficial cell that draws lots of dead cells around it. The cancer cell, when it dies, it sets out a serum. It's like a virus. It's a solvent that dissolves all the dead cells that it's called out into that station. So that's why malignant tumors can dissolve in overnight or in days. A benign tumor, there's no circulation to it. There are no cancer cells in there that has that solvent virus type agent in it. So a benign tumor can take forever to dissolve and get rid of. So cancer was what I like. So cancer cells are good guys. To get rid of it, also sperm is a good way to get rid of, because it has a concentrated amount of stem cells. So putting sperm on any kind of disrobing, putting sperm cells on any kind of cancer or any kind of a sore. I mean, I've got people using sperm to get rid of wrinkles, and it gets rid of them very quickly. Because what it does, it grows, it helps the healthy cells grow and allow the dead cells, which are just bricks in the wall, to fall off. I'm not vain enough to do it all the time, but I do it once in a while.
So the bone marrow is topical.
Topical, yes.
Okay.
Well, you can use it internally too.
Okay.
Absolutely. To reverse your bone marrow, yeah. Topically and internally. Yeah.
So why do people die of cancer?
They usually don't die of cancer unless a particular tumor is blocking their digestive tract or their wind passage. Normally, they die of chemotherapy, radiation therapy, of medical treatment, lots of antibiotics. That's usually what kills people. Because people who do this diet and don't get medical therapy, 95% of them survive. In medical profession, only about 52% make it 5 years, or 50% make it 5 years. And they use the 5-year cutoff period because guess what? In the next year to a year and a half, 40% more will die. So that's why they use the 5-year cutoff period. We've cured you. And then if you get a next incident of it, oh no, it's a whole new occurrence. It has nothing to do with the old cancer. Absolute bullshit. So, did that answer your question? Okay. I mean, there are other things you can put vinegar on it, but of course, anything that destabilizes, it irritates the surrounding cells is not the best way to do it. You want to nutrify an area. You want the healthy cells to survive and just flake. You've heard of being a flake. Well, you want to be a flake sometimes. Just flake off those dead cells. Okay? Do you have a question?
Yeah. Would you recommend weight resistance training?
Pardon?
Weight resistance training. Weight training.
Weight-resistant training. Any kind of training you want. It's fine as long as you're on a good diet. There is a problem with some people. Lucky had a problem with his tendons and muscles shrinking up, so he's getting tight and stiff. That's a sign that you're not eating enough, or you're not digesting your proteins properly. Also is a sign of collecting lactic acid in the muscles. So it creates these crystallizations. It shortens the tendons, shortens the muscles, because it lacerates them, causes scar tissue to form. And then you become very stiff. You see those guys, they're big and brawny and they can't move. That's that kind of crystallization that begins with the uric acid buildup. And the crystallizations from that causing lesions cutting into it. So again, a little vinegar if you're heavy into any kind of physical activity. Make sure you break up that lactic acid with either whey, raw whey, not something you get in a regular health food store, because that's always pasteurized and treated, but it has to be a good raw whey or your vinegar.
You're saying bleeding is lactic acid? So
Pardon?
When it bleeds, that means you have excess.
Bleed?
Right.
No. When you exercise, you have a lactic acid byproduct of utilizing your fuel as energy. If you're a weight trainer, a weight lifter, any kind of an athlete, you're going to have a lot of lactic acid buildup. And that's a high acidic mineral concentration. And when they collect into like little bitty tiny glass particles, and they can slice if they stay in the muscle if you don't dissolve them. So you have to make sure they're dissolved. And the lactic acid doesn't build up, or else you're going to get stiff and scarred. Remember, the stiffness is scarring of those muscles and tendons.
How much whey would you recommend? And is that before or after the
Either way. Either before or after. Because it's not going to be digested entirely all at once, and those nutrients are going to stay in the blood. Probably what I would do if I were to work out, and I haven't worked out since 1979, I would drink it while I was working out and continue for about an hour after. No, you have to have it could be either. Yeah, not both. I think both would demineralize you too much. And if you're going to work out like that, if you're going to do workouts and be a heavy athlete, it's a good idea to eat a lot of cheese all day long. Just sugar cube sized amounts every hour to an hour and a half. Make sure you're collecting the poisons. So not staying in, because those poisons always carry heavy mineral concentrations. And if they start collecting anywhere, you're going to have those little crystals storing in your tissues, lacerating, causing scarring. So it's a good idea to have the cheese going through you, and then when you have the whey or the vinegar, it's going to dissolve the crystals, and then they'll be drawn to the digestive tract, where the cheese will pull it into the digestive tract and hold on to it like a sponge and pass it out of the body. Okay?
So you just drink as much whey as you want, or as much as you're thirsty?
No, because again, you're going to demineralize the system.
Okay.
It's like vinegar. It's just not concentrated like vinegar. So let's say you drank, if you're an athlete, or let's say you're a massage therapist, you're working all day long, you could go through 3 cups of the whey a day. And maybe, a teaspoon of vinegar a day broken up into maybe a third of a teaspoon at a time throughout the day. If you're a ditch digger, or you work with horses, something that causes a lot of physical activity and exertion, you can use the whey throughout the day or a little bit of vinegar throughout the day, space it out. And if you find that you're stiff, you're not taking enough. If you find that you're getting bleeds and your skin's getting thin and your lips are getting very acidic and starting to burn, then you're not eating enough minerals. You need more cheese. Okay? Do you have a question?
Yeah, what about hypothyroid/thyroid? Thyroid and
Yeah, like I said in the book, for thyroid, eating cheese and dates together, butter and dates together are one of the best ways to stimulate the thyroid gland. Also, putting a hot water bottle at the side of your neck, or even two of them, and then taking a towel or a silk shawl is a little bit more energetic and works a little better. And the only reason I believe in energies like that with different materials, because I've experimented with them, and I found that it is a fact. Wool even works very well, but I found that silk works better. So if you use like a silk shawl or scarf, and that covers the hot water bottle or hot water bottles, and tends the heat into the neck area, it keeps the heat where you want it, and it'll increase circulation to the thyroid gland, or any damaged and sore or area where you want to heal the body, cleanse and heal the body, because you have a particular problem there. You put the hot water bottle there and tent the heat into that area. If you go to sleep with a hot water bottle under the covers, the whole bed's going to be heated. So it doesn't really focus on one area. So that's why you tint the heat into a particular area. So and stay away from pine nuts. Pine nuts reduce the production of thyroxines. Okay? Do you have a question?
You don't seem to mind
No, absolutely. I want people to record. They cannot film it. He's the only one that I allow to film.
Do you mind sharing it? Because there's a person that is in another city which would like a copy.
That's not a good idea. That's for a person. If they want it, they kind of have to come. Or wherever I am, they have to show up. Eventually, I will have a whole volume of books with questions and answers that have been asked and answered at all of these. So then the books will be available at that point. And hopefully that'll be in 2 years. All 4 volumes of all those Q&As. So I got one volunteer that's going to help with that, and then several other people who are going to help with that. Do you have any other question about health?
I'll pass you now.
Okay, all right. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm asking it on behalf of my dad.
Okay.
He had a, and I snuck raw colostrum into the hospital. I was going to get kicked out in one of your books. Anyway, it's been 7 days, and he had anesthetic and a lot of antibiotics and all that. And last night he was so dizzy, he thought maybe he was having a blood clot and was going to go to the ER. So what can I give him to help the dizziness?
Well, the dizziness, her father just went through a hernia surgery, which means they put a mesh in there. Now, there are several meshes. Most of them are plastic, and there's one pig skin mesh made of pig skin, of course, like catgut, with certain kinds of thread, for sutures. There's only a few doctors in the United States that use the pig mesh, because you have to understand, doctors are taught to be afraid of any animal tissue. It's the cause of all disease. Animals are cause of all disease on the planet. Anything that's a live organism is the cause of all of our ills on earth. It's absolute ridiculous garbage, but they believe it because the pharmaceutical house tells them that that's the way it is, and they totally buy it. So these are very smart people, but they're certainly not wise doctors. These are people who are good parrots, smart parrots. So he's having dizziness right now. Dizziness is always 2 things. after a surgery. It's the lowering of blood sugar and the lowering of fat at the same time. If you're dizzy normally, you must be a female. I'm glad I got to laugh with that. I thought, I better not play with that. No, when you're dizzy, otherwise it's usually an imbalance of fluid from one ear to the other. That's what mainly causes vertigo. You've got more fluid in one ear than the other. So to get rid of fluid in one ear to the other, you put a hot water bottle there at night, tent it around that area, so you perspire those fluids out of that one ear, and that will lower it. You can always tell which ear it is because that'll have more pressure on that ear.
It's not
Pardon?
to your liver, like a stressed liver, that whole concept, Eastern philosophy.
You put it in a towel, don't you said in a towel, a cloth.
Not in a towel. You put the you put the hot water bottle there, and you tempt, you put the towel over your head like this, so you're tempting the heat into whatever side of the head.
But is the bottle touching your skin or no?
You don't want it touching
Doesn't touch
because
it,
you
that's
put
right.
pressure against it, and you can't make it very hot that way. And if you want it a long many hours, then you need the hot water bottle hotter, but it can't be too close to the body. So with his situation, give him some honey and butter is a good way to, because when honey's raw, it's only 10% sugar, and it's 90% enzymes for digesting fats and proteins, mainly proteins, secondarily fats. So the honey and butter mixture will help after a surgery, that kind of dizziness. Because that doesn't have to do with a hemorrhage or an aneurysm or anything like that. It's a nutrient deficiency. And especially, it happens from anesthesia. So, and a lot of people experience that. And of course, he could eat the cheese to help draw out the toxicity from the anesthesia. Okay, do you have a question?
Yeah, on using clay in the hot baths.
Uh-huh.
If you
Whoever told you use clay in a hot bath?
in your book, if you have a jacuzzi or hot tub, can you just keep recycling that same clay
It'll be forever good.
forever?
Forever good. As long as if you had sand with it, let's say you're using a like a Hayward sand filter, and you put clay in it, that clay will stay with the sand, and they work together to filter. And it will never go bad. Even if it goes to black soot, it's still as good.
Wow.
Yeah, it may stink a little bit, like
I
a
found
sewer.
it starts
but,
to stink. Yeah.
And if you don't like that stench, then you need to flush it.
Do you know of a good cheap source of clay for baths?
You can go to Terriman and get their crude stuff they use for fertilizer.
Oh, okay. They've got it
and it's cheaper. Yeah.
Okay.
You buy by the bags.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but make sure it isn't the stuff they put extra, stuff in like bone calcium or something like that, bone meal. Don't want that. You just want the straight clay.
Cool.
Okay. Do you have a question, Barbara?
First, I missed something earlier when you said mineral supplement of cheese and honey. You don't want too much honey because, and I missed that part of it.
Because it will cause a fractionation of the ionization groups. Like you may have 5 molecules or 6 molecules of calcium with about 3 or 4 molecules of magnesium, 1 of phosphorus, 2 of potassium. Now that's the normal collective unit that is a balance. Too much honey causes a fractionation of that, and they may not be utilized for feeding the cells properly. And when you put the honey with the cheese, that is to nutrify the body, not to use as a detoxifier, and not to cause mineral imbalances. So it has to be a small amount of honey.
So my question is, raw mangosteen has been recommended as a tumor killer. What are your thoughts on that?
Remember that a cancer cell is going to die when it's time to die. If you kill it early and you get rid of your cancer cells, what happens if you build a tumor with no tumor cells, no cancer cells around to dissolve the dead cells? It's my philosophy and my experience that you let the body dissolve the tumor when the body is ready. As long as you're feeding it properly, the body's going to do it at the time it's supposed to. Remember that fluid that's in a cancer cell is the same kind of property as a virus. It is not alive. That the fluid is not alive. It's not a live serum like the blood. It is a solvent. It is a protein structure that disassembles tissue. So it starts dissolving all the dead cells around, and your body knows the timing. And if you do it too soon and you get some tumors later, where are your cancer cells going to come from? You have a limited number of cancer cells. Everybody has cancer. Everybody has cancer. It's just that when you have a concentration of a certain number of cancer cells is when the pharmaceutical industry says, okay, we've got to treat you because now you've got a damaging cancer. And then they'll make $80,000 every treatment. And that's what it's all about. They want you to use their chemotherapy, their radiation machines, anything that makes them money. Has nothing to do with fact and health.
So what about the mangosteen in general? Do you believe in that? Or?
The mangosteen has the ability to be solvent reactive. But it just doesn't isolate itself to cancer cells.
So I just meant in general.
So if you have weak cells throughout the body, and you start dissolving other weak cells, let's say it's in your brain, you'll lose a lot of brain cells. You'll lose a lot of liver cells. And that may be something you can't afford to do at any particular time. So I don't think that anybody should aggressively go after any kind of tumor unless it's esophageal cancer, or it's lung cancer, or it's spinal cancer.
And why is that?
Because, when you have them on the spine, if you cut that, if you block the spinal cord, then you cut the connection off for the rest of the body. If you don't mind being paraplegic, that's fine. But if you don't want to be paraplegic, it's like, okay, do I want to live as a paraplegic? Or do I want to be aggressive and take a chance on dying sooner? So that's, it's a gamble. And on your case, I'd have to see your x-rays before I'd make that decision. Okay.
What did you mean by everybody has cancer?
Everybody has cancer cells in their body. The concentration is like 50 to 10,000. 50 cancer cells to 10,000 normal cells.
Oh.
When you get a concentration of 100 per 10,000, they diagnose you as having cancer that needs to be treated.
So it's just smaller groupings.
Well, false concentration.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, do you have a question, John?
Yes. 6 months or so, everything's been blurry for this eye, and I kind of worked at it by focusing at different distances, and that seems to improve it a little bit.
Yes.
In the book, you talk about more olive oil and I think beets or something like that, if I remember right.
Together.
So what do I do? Put it in the juice?
Yeah, you take maybe make your juice 10% beet juice and put about a teaspoon and a half of olive oil in it.
Okay. Well, that won't have repercussions in any other way.
No, not at that concentration.
And is there anything that you put on the eyelid or anything like that?
You can put bone marrow, sperm. Now, when you use sperm, because sperm are very, very strong. Ovum, you can use ovum, but there's no way to harvest ovum. Any of you women got any ideas, let me know, because that's high in stem cells also. But the sperm will go right into the lid, and cause burning in the eye. So you might want to let it dry a little bit and deaden them just a little bit. So the stem cells are active and not the sperm itself. The bone marrow stinks a little bit, so you have stinky eyelids. Unless you're making out with somebody that can smell it. No, you don't wash it off. You just leave it there. It's just you barely moisturize with it and you rub it in. If you go beyond, I'm not talking about putting sperm or bone marrow on your skin to the point where it gets dry and you see it. It's got to be so thin, barely wet it and put it in.
What about butter?
Pardon?
Butter.
Butter, in my experiments with that over a 10-year period, it caused a lot of burning in the eyes. Constant burning all day long. Butter is a very acidic fat, and in the eyes it causes constant irritation. So butter's not that great.
I put butter every day now. I use only butter.
That's some people. Depends upon their condition.
There's butter in your face cream. So that's,
but that's mixed with other things.
Okay.
It's not butter by itself.
So I can expect this to just go away naturally after a while.
Yeah, but of course, most of those nutrients go in from the eye. Now, in my experiments, ideologically, you've got more nerves than you do muscles in the eye. So white meat should be more conducive to correcting vision, but it isn't. I can clear up somebody's poor focus or blurred vision that happens because of tiredness from the day from just eating a red meat meal, and it won't occur from eating fish or chicken or any other kind of poultry. Only with red meat does it correct. So it has something to do with the muscle and not necessarily the shape of the cornea as the day wears, or you wear through the day.
Well, there's some of that too, because my other eye compensates and it's super great vision.
Yeah.
But I do get strain, I think, during the course of the day, just from that.
And you have to nutrify yourself from the inside. So the beet juice or the olive oil will help clean the eye. And then to nutrify it, you have to eat the meat with some beef with some fish or fowl, or a combination of all three. And then put the bone marrow on it, and it will focus more in that area.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have a question?
How do you deal with chronic compulsive overeating due to underlying post-traumatic stress or child abuse?
Okay. It's never from that directly. Because the body is used to being in trauma, it has a higher nutritive need. Stress will burn up a lot of nutrients, especially B vitamins, quickly. Then your body's hungry for a lot of B vitamins. Only way you can balance that is eating a lot of eggs and meat and milk, and making sure your intestines work well. Your E. coli is plentiful. If it isn't, you need to stay away from anything that will cause contamination in the bowel. And that's a lot of fruit. Fruit will destroy the ability. Ripe fruit will destroy the ability. Sugars will destroy that. The E. coli, enemas, colonics will destroy it. When the fecal matter, when the food moves from the ileocecal valve into the colon, the E. coli, they're plentiful, and they just keep eating away at the food. Their discard, which is shit and urine, their discard is our food. They've digested it for us. They've separated and fractionated it for us. So that's where we derive all these nutrients. As it passes through, all that digestion is occurring, and then when we get to the descending colon, and at the sigmoid colon finally, is where all that stuff starts being absorbed. So in the sigmoid colon, almost all of it is just ripped out of the fecal matter. That's why you get very dry right there. And if you get very dry right there, that means your body is very hungry for the nutrients that the E. coli has released. To help balance that, you can take 3 tablespoons each of butter, cream, coconut cream, 1/4 teaspoon of honey, and you put that in a 4-ounce jelly jar. You shake it, put it in a bowl of hot water, get it up to about 100, 102 degrees. Remember, milk, a cow heats up to 105 degrees, cow's body temperature, up to 105 degrees, 102 to 101 to 105. So you can take dairy up to that temperature. When the honey is mixed with, that little tiny bit of honey is mixed with that cream from the cow, it will not damage it. Honey normally is damaged from 93 degrees on, and it turns it all back into sugar. So that much heat with that little bit of honey is not a contradiction. That honey with that cream. So you take an intimate bulb syringe, like a 4-ounce one, 8 ounces, if that's all you have, a 2-ounce little baby one. Well, you have to do it in 2 stages if you do it with a 2-ounce one. And then right before you go to sleep, you get on all fours, you bark like a dog, and then insert it in you. And when you're doing it, don't get excited. Just go like this, and then you insert it in you, and then get down on all fours, roll your stomach like a belly dancer, because you don't want to remove it. You want it to stay in you. And then you just roll over on your left side. Roll your stomach again, and that'll move it in. So what will happen is it will lubricate the sigmoid colon. And once it's finished lubricating that and the fecal matter, it'll go further up into the colon and feed the E. coli. And it'll help preserve the E. coli and make them stronger. So then you won't have constipation for 4 or 5 days. And some people will have to do that every 4 or 5 days, especially people with high anxiety stress. Now, most people have that kind of stress from any kind of abuse because almost all the foods out there in a grocery store have no nutrients in them. And when you see nutrients added to it, vitamins, remember those vitamins are not natural. Those are all chemical. So you're really not getting any biological nutrient in there, complete form. The food industry loves that because you eat all the time, you'll never be satisfied. The only drawback to that is some people get, nauseous from it because they don't digest properly, and a lot of the toxins cause them to lose their appetite. But most people are never satisfied, so they're constantly eating, and they overeat. The food companies love that, absolutely love it. So the more they can denature the food and make you eat more of it, they will do it. So when you're on a raw diet and you're getting plenty of the proper nutrients in a balanced diet, like I organized it on page 40 and 41 of the recipe book, if you follow that kind of pattern, for most people that will work, and you'll never be hungry. You'll never have those cravings that are blown out after about the first 30 days. Once your body gets enough nutrients, it will say, oh my God, finally, I'm not hungry all the time. I feel satisfied with my food. So I've never had anybody that has not been satisfied unless they eat salt. Salt demineralizes, destroys intestinal bacteria, causes all kinds of problems. Sure, it'll get rid of symptoms galore. But it does it just like an antibiotic. It is ruthless. The second worst thing to cooking is salt.
Not even sugar?
No. Sugar's not as bad as salt.
Soy sauce too.
Sugar will, in the intestinal tract, the sugar doesn't necessarily break down and destroy bacteria as easily as salt does. Because salt dehydrates the bacteria, completely dries it up. Sugar doesn't. The bacteria can avoid contact and absorption of the sugars. But the villi in the intestines, when the sugar hits it, it eats away at them. So, of course, you've got 20 years of sugar, eating sugar, your villi are going to be reduced in size, dissolved, acidically dissolved from sugar products by a quarter every 20 years. So by the time you're 60 years old, you have very short villi. And what is the villi for? As the food passes through, it registers what kind of food it is and what bacteria and what digestive enzymes are necessary. So as the villi are moved, they send serum out through their pores, and that's your digestive juices. In the stomach, it's almost all hydrochloric acid. In the intestinal tracts, it's hydrochloric acid. It is numerous different types of even bile. But the most concentration of bile is in the duodenum. However, bile is secreted throughout the small intestine. In the bowel, there's nothing secreted except for E. coli. It's an E. coli environment. But E. coli, isn't that the dangerous shit? No, E. coli is important for your health, for your psychological and emotional health. 95% of all depression is because of a lack of E. coli. Digesting those finite molecules of fats and protein to feed the brain and the nervous system. So you have to have a good, clean environment in your home. And if you need to, squirt some kefir up there that's naturally made, less sugar for that less honey for that environment. That's why I only use a quarter teaspoon with the coconut cream, the butter, and the dairy cream to insert it in there. When you do that, that helps that environment, that E. coli environment. Okay?
So what about getting E. coli from another source, like sugar?
Well, it is a good, helpful thing. However, that if you're eating the E. coli from a buffalo or a cow, it's a different E. coli. The E. coli feeds on vegetation. Even though by the time the vegetation is in the cow's colon, it's an entirely acidic environment, it's still slightly different. If you get a pig's intestines and eat the bowel of a pig, that's perfect for us. Our system is 86% like a pig's.
What do you recommend eating?
We're all pigs.
When do you recommend having to eat feces?
Pardon?
When do you recommend eating feces?
Anytime you want. But I don't recommend eating feces that's already dried because E. coli is inactive. And all of their little offspring won't become active easily. So if like I have some Amish farmers who will harvest it when they're butchering their pigs, and what they'll do is you say a pound, 2 pounds of it, they'll tie it off like it's a sausage. And then when you get it, you take just like a 2-ounce section and eat that, until it's gone. And that usually will take care of you for at least a year, 6 months to a year. And then you do it again if you still need help. Or you can eat high meat. The bacteria in the meat pre-digest the fats and the proteins to be able to feed the brain and the nervous system.
That's a little more exciting.
That's why high meat, well, think about it this way. The high meat stinks like hell. It'll stink up your house. The poop you're eating over a short period of time, and you don't have to have it all the time. Because remember, the E. coli from the poop is going to help your E. coli thrive and live. When you eat high meat, it does not help the E. coli breed. So what you're doing is eating all the pre-digested fats and proteins to feed your brain and nervous system. It works because you get happy in 20 minutes. You can go from deep, dark depression to happiness in 20 minutes just by feeding your nervous system. So to remember, depression is always a lack of B vitamins and proteins and fats for the nervous system. E. coli is responsible for making that grade of nutrient. Anxiety has nothing to do with that. Anxiety is having a lot of hormones for physical energy. Let's say you have a lot of estrogen and a lot of testosterone, but no adrenaline. The adrenaline is the kicker to make you want to be active and physical and exercise. But the testosterone and the estrogen are also physical orienters, but they don't have the motivation type activity involved in it. So you can have a lot of testosterone, a lot of estrogen in your system, but not be motivated to do anything. Yet you have to physically utilize that in physical activity, or you're going to go into anxiety. So you have to force yourself to exercise in that situation. If you've got anxiety, exercise is your key, period. Sure, you can eat the nut formula to help bind with some of that hormone, but usually if you're producing it every day, you can't eat the nut formula every day. You shouldn't eat cooked starch every day to bind with it. You need to frickin' exercise.
Is miso and salt the same thing?
Yeah. Miso is like 30% salt.
So miso is no good.
These misos no good. Soy sauces, all those are very concentrated in salt.
And seaweed.
Yep. Anyway, you can't bring up questions like this while we're going around?
Sorry.
Okay. We're going to get off track. Do you have a question up there on the stairs? Young man.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about the high meat. I have some safety concerns about bacteria and all this stuff, so I would like you can elaborate more on that. What kind of meat you would recommend to make it?
Any kind you want. I mean, any kind of healthy meat is fine. Doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to be afraid. You know, like I said, I have a vagotomy, which means that the vagus nerve was severed from my stomach. At 20 years old, they told me that I'd never be able to eat anything raw, that I would die, absolutely die, without question, painfully, from any bacterial and parasitical invasion, even if I ate a raw banana or apple. Everything had to be steamed or cooked. I only eat raw food, and I've been doing it since 1972. I've eaten parasite-infested meats, high meats, everything, and have never gotten sick from it. So they don't know what they're talking about. All this fear stuff is to keep you doing the stuff that makes you well. It is a conspiracy. To make, absolutely, it's a conspiracy to keep you sick, them in money. Period. Do you have a question?
Yeah, what do you recommend for burnt out adrenals?
Like I say in the book, those people, if you really have burned out adrenals, a lot of people misunderstand this. Adrenal exhaustion means you can't get out of bed. That's adrenal exhaustion. People who are diagnosed with adrenal exhaustion don't have adrenal exhaustion. Maybe they have a little adrenal fatigue. Their adrenals have worked very hard. But if you can get up out of your bed, if you can get up out of your chair, you do not have adrenal exhaustion. If you had adrenal exhaustion, like I say in the book, those are the only people that I ever recommend salt for. But that's only 3 little bitty grains a week. And eating adrenal glands, eating liver, any kind of concentrated protein. The heart is also a good protein to eat. So remember, the heart is mainly protein, the liver is mainly protein. Lymphatic system is the cleansing. Remember, your lymph system is the cleanser of the body. It cleans out all debris, all waste, all dead cells. It takes it into the system either through the nodes or the glands. That's where it does the work. They do the work. They'll set out serums like viruses, solvents to dissolve that tissue. Then they also utilize nutrients from the lacteal system to neutralize those compounds. Then it dumps it into connective tissue. Then you perspire it out the skin, or it will dump it into the mucous membranes, like in the intestinal tract, to flush it out there. But most of it goes out through the skin. You take hot baths every day, 35, 40 minutes a day. If you actually have lymphatic congestion, you look in the book, We Want to Live Under Lymphatic Congestion, and do the lymphatic baths. And that's doing 1 to 2 baths a week that last an hour to an hour and a half. And there's a pineapple formula in there that you take for that particular kind of bath. Not for the short 35, 40-minute baths, but for the hour to an hour and a half bath, you need that pineapple coconut formula in there to help move it. So your lymph system is doing its job. And remember, your lymph system will contain more concentrations of cancer than anywhere else in the body. You can always, if you plug one of your lymph glands and you're over the age of 38 years old, 80% of the time you're going to be diagnosed with lymphatic cancer. And you don't have lymphatic cancer. Your lymph glands are doing a job. If you've got a lymph gland or node that is hard as rock, you've got cancer in that gland. If it's as hard as rubber, it is not cancer. If it's movable, it is not cancer. It's doing its job. It's dissolving cancer cells from somewhere else in the body. And all these women get these lumpectomies, and they're risking their lives because if they don't have the lymph glands to break down all of that dead tissue and the cancer cells, they're going to grow tumors like crazy. So all these women getting mastectomies and lumpectomies are just ensuring that they're going to get cancer in their life, and they're going to die from it because they have no way to cleanse it. No lymph systems. Yes.
Coffee enemas actually aggravate
Oh,
the
coffee
situation?
enemas will cause cancer 3, 4 years, 5 years down the line. Unless you keep doing them for the rest of your life. Then you poison the body to the point where it says, hey, screw it. When you get old, you're going to be one of those people that walks around with few cells alive because you've contained all the dead cells in the body and they can't be dissolved out of the system. So it all depends on what kind of a life you want. So you can make your choices. So you can do enemas, coffee enemas, and end up an old person like that, a stiff robot, with very little functionality at all. Or you can not do them and let the lymph system eat properly and let the lymph system do its job. But anybody who has cancer needs to get very fat. That's very important to dissolve and feed that lymphatic system. To not dissolve the lymphatic system, for this lymphatic system to get the fats that they need to dissolve the dead cells. So any patient of mine who has cancer, if they don't get fat, I know they're not going to last. Those are the 9 out of 10 people who've died, and only 5% die utilizing this diet with cancer. Only 5% died. 9 out of 10 of those would not gain the weight. They'd stay thin like you. They didn't make it. Yeah, 1 out of 10. Yeah. But she never gained as much weight as she was still 10 pounds under. I wanted her to gain 10 more pounds and she wouldn't do it. And this girl, Kimberly, at the end, she was vomiting like crazy, not as bad as Awanza, but, 7 times a day, 8 times a day. And after 2.5 months, I had to figure out what she was vomiting, so I took 4 ounces of her vomit and sent it to a laboratory. And the laboratory called me and said, somebody's poisoning your patient. And I said, what do you mean? He said, she has 3,000 times the lethal dose of thallium in that 4 ounces of vomit. And I said, nobody's poisoning her. She was a metallurgist. She made jewelry from silver jewelry and burned it right over the Bunsen burner, never wore a mask or gloves. So she inhaled all that thallium. Thallium is a mineral that's almost as toxic as mercury and almost as soft as lead. And it's highly toxic. Not quite as bad as mercury, but nearly. So She was just at the end. The tumor stopped forming, everything. She didn't have enough weight. She couldn't eat for the last 2.5 weeks. She died because she couldn't eat. If she had just had 10 more frickin' pounds, like I tried to get her to do for 2 years, she would have made it through that crisis. And that's why I say, if you've got a serious problem, you need to be overweight, because when you go through that detoxification process, if it's an intense one, you're not likely to make it well and easy. You need to get fat. When I went through mine, I was huge. I mean, they called me Fatty Arbo. And I wouldn't have made it if I hadn't been that fat. Okay. You have a question?
What is urinary tract infection?
Anywhere are damaged cells, either damaged from the chemicals that you're eating or in your environment. So if they're in the urethra or in the kidney or in the bladder, you've got a urinary tract infection. If those cells are damaged, your body will use either bacteria, parasites, or fungus. If you're lucky, if you're unlucky and they're so toxic that the fungus, the bacteria, or the parasites can't eat it, then you have to use a viral infection to clean it. So it's always a cleansing. And when you stop doing the things that irritate and damage the urinary tract, you'll stop having infections. Of course, a lot of poisons get dumped into the urinary tract. So those can cause damage if you don't have a good enough fats, and those cells in the walls of your urethra, kidneys, and bladder are not solid and protected. They can be damaged.
So if I started changing my diet and I noticed that I started getting a urinary infection, that I changed my diet to eat more fats, raw fats, that wouldn't have created the infection.
No, that won't have created it. Your body will have used, say, oh, I've got the fats now, let's get rid of this garbage. And then all of a sudden you've got this stuff leaving the urinary tract, and you've got dead cells leaving. They have to get dissolved and separated from the tissue there. They don't just fall off on their own.
I've
So
never
it's got to
had
go
a
in there.
tract infection in my
Yeah.
life.
Mhm.
This is the first time.
Congratulations.
No. I didn't know what it was. I go online every
It's a
week.
cleansing, yeah. But you're still pretty thin, you know. I don't know how much fat are in those, in your urinary tract walls. It's a difficult place to feed. So anybody who has a urinary tract infection, skin problems, you have to eat the moisturizing lubrication formula. I love telling this story. It's two names because women love moisturizing, men love lubrication. So I call it two things. Hemorrhoids are a little different. Hemorrhoids is when blood is your decontaminator. Your blood is acting as a filter like the lymph system. And it's binding with heavy metals and toxins that are in the bottom or rectal area, even in the prostate. The blood is your cleanser. That shows a very advanced state of toxicity in the urinary and bowel area. So what happens, you get a cyst that's full of blood, and that blood is highly contaminated. When I've had the blood analyzed for toxicity, remember your doctors and chemists will always look for bacteria. They're always looking for the microbe bad guy, the microbe villain. But it's always the concentration of toxin. When I've examined the 6 that I've examined, the blood from those hemorrhoids, high mercury, high lead, high cadmium.
Like copper?
I haven't seen copper in a hemorrhoid. I've only seen 6 of them. It's $2,300 to analyze one sample. So that's a lot of money. I've spent over $1 million, and I'm finished with it. Well, once in a while I'm too curious. I'll still spend the money. Last time I spent $8,200 on one lab test because of all the things that I wanted tested for. Very comprehensive. So, and I found in this one guy's tumor that it was all full of vitamins and supplements. The entire tumor was full of vitamins and supplements. Yep. Bad tumor.
Undigested.
A lot of people you people saw him before he died.
Who was that?
Guy with the tumor on his face.
Oh, Maynard?
Maynard.
Maynard just passed away.
Maynard passed away months ago.
Oh, I wanted to say because I didn't know what to go back.
Passed away months ago. Okay? All right. Do you have a question?
I have a question about prostate cancer. How do you reconcile your recommendations and the many research that shows a link between prostate cancer and dairy and red meat and food?
That's only if they're cooked or pasteurized. Cooked and pasteurized meat and dairy are a problem. Absolutely.
One thing, he was on the diet a number of years, wasn't he? Like 10 years?
He had filled his body with a lot of toxins and he wouldn't get fat, remember? So, it's cooked meat and pasteurized dairy that are a problem with any cancer.
And the origin of the dairy.
Pardon?
The origin, the quality of the dairy and the meat, obviously, right?
To an extent. If you're having pasteurized, hormone-treated dairy with no cream in it, you've got a real problem. If it's skim milk, you've got a real problem because you got no fat to control that toxicity that's in that protein in the chemically produced dairy.
I know you want to go back to this, but did the treatment have something to do with his passing away?
No.
Because he went for extreme treatment.
Yeah, he went for that treatment, but that's only because, he's taking over his face again. But when I had that tissue analyzed, it was all concentrations of mineral supplements and vitamins. I'm telling you, they're chemical just like anything else. The only place you can get food vitamins is from food. Think about it, people. You have to use your head. This is a money-producing industry. They want your money. If they took vitamins from food, how many vitamin E's are they going to get out of a whole ear of corn? How much vitamin E are they going to get out of a whole ear of corn to fit a couple capsules? Do you think they're going to produce hundreds and thousands of acres of corn or soybeans to get a few vitamin E capsules? They would cost you thousands of dollars. Each capsule could cost you $200, $300, $400. These people are using chemistry. Sure, you've got a good guy with a good mind, people who want good things, they go to a chemistry lab, say, this is what I want. And the chemistry lab tells them, oh, we can do that, and they're lying through their teeth. You can't do it. Because that chemistry lab is going to go to a food manufacturer and say, I need your waste product so I can use a chemical extraction and get a certain nutrient out of that food. That food's already been chemically treated. It's already been heat processed. It's not food anymore. It's a chemical laboratory.
Fish oils.
Fish oils, still, the FDA doesn't allow fish oil in unless it's treated. Chemically or heat treated, and both usually. Can't do it. You want fish oil, you eat fish. And then you utilize it better anyway. If you're looking like at supplements like Butter X, that's different. You got a fermentation process that cuts off this really refined fat from a cruder fat. That's like, making butter from cream. It is a process, but it's still a food.
That's the butter oil from the Western Pride Foundation?
Yeah, that's correct.
Back on prostate. How do you detox prostate?
Well, tomatoes are an excellent way to detox the prostate.
But isn't that the lowest point in the man's body, so a lot of stuff collects down there?
Absolutely.
And so
it's a muscle. It's a muscle with a very low fat level. It's got the concentration of protein that the heart does, because it's like a heart. The object of the prostate gland is to eject the sperm. That's the only job of the prostate. It's to eject sperm.
What is this high PSA?
PSA is garbage regulation. It's another measurement where the pharmaceutical industry says, okay, doctors, if you got a PSA count, treat these people for prostate cancer. If prostate cancer and PSA had anything to do with prostate cancer, when you have a prostate removed, the PSA count should disappear. And my patients who come to me with prostate cancer and then have their prostates removed, I've seen the PSA up to 86. 86. And if they had no prostate, why do they have a PSA count? Doctors say, oh, well, they start producing it in other areas of the body. That's absolute bullshit. Again, it's the pharmaceutical industry making a fortune, because all men will have prostate problems on a bad diet sometime later in their life. Pardon? The PSA has nothing to do with prostate health. Nothing to do with prostate health.
You're right. I worked on that test.
You worked on that test?
I worked on that test, and Jim Merkel developed it. It's all marketing. All of it was marketing. It took us 2 years to sell it to the industry that was the marker.
This is a biochemist.
No, I'm a medical engineer.
Medical engineer, medical engineer. Who knows biochemistry?
I worked on it.
Yeah. So he worked on that test for PSA. It is garbage science. It's garbage science. Again, the pharmaceutical industry to get every male, and 1 out of 3 males has prostate problems in their lifetime. Very easy to get them to, and look at the therapy. How much does it cost? You got to probably go through prostate removal, if you're getting radiation therapy or chemotherapy for prostate cancer, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a big money issue again. It's a marketing. Just like you said, it's marketing.
It was. I got it.
You eat tomatoes. Tomatoes are great for getting rid of prostate cancer.
But it has to be strained the way you say in the book.
It has to be what?
Strained the way you say in the book.
It doesn't have to be strained. Usually people who have a prostate problem have a little bit of bowel. They have polyps in the bowels. I find that you go hand in hand about 80% of the time. And sometimes those seeds in the tomato can cause some polyps problems.
So filter those out.
Yeah, filter them. Yeah, or juice it.
Very juicy.
Yeah. And blueberries. Blueberries and coconut cream are great for prostate.
Together.
Yeah, together. Yes.
The prostate gland is like a seminal fluid for the sperm to slide on, not producing the sperm.
No, it's a muscle. It's not a gland. Really. They call it a prostate gland, and it does have fluid but it doesn't. It isn't like the bursas, which create a fluid to keep lubrication in there. It's mainly a muscle. There are areas where it creates that fluid, but it's mainly a fluid for itself. Like the heart builds, the fat deposits on the top of the heart, that creates a fluid too. So that part of the heart could be called a gland, because it creates a fluid, which is like bursa fluid, which lubricates the muscles and keeps them from going into lockdown or Charlie horse.
They have those prostate exercise things. Yeah, is that it? Is that a good thing?
Any exercise is good as long as you're on a good diet. Yeah, it's fine.
That's not something like
Right.
this,
And just remember, if you have, you got a problem anywhere, you want to focus healing in that area, your hot water bottle at night, stick it between your legs, put a towel over this area, and it'll work on that area. It'll cause swelling in that area. Swelling provides more nutrients to the area. It allows the area to expand and relax. More nutrients into the area. Okay? Did you have another question that didn't involve?
How does, I've always been curious how chicken pox and measles seem to spread through one kid gets it, the whole class gets it, and yet it's not contagious.
Well, usually chicken pox is a food detoxification that children get about the same age. It's usually from cereal. Chicken pox very rarely existed before breads ever came into existence. So chicken pox is mainly caused by breads and processed grains. It is a fungal type reaction in the body, and it throws these poisons out through the skin, and because they're highly acidic with sugars that dissolve, a lot of disaccharids and monosaccharids come out and they burn the skin as it comes out, and that's why they pox. They cause the scarring, the damage to the skin. It'll happen in a whole group of children. It doesn't happen in one place. It'll happen over a whole city, 2 cities, 3 cities, because the environment, the area, remember, any kind of a detox is always associated with humidity and temperature and the toxicity within the particular child. Not everybody gets the chicken pox. Everybody got chicken pox but me, but I got everything else. And then when everybody else didn't have chicken pox, I got the chicken pox all by myself.
The measles are the same.
But measles are a little bit more. That's a lot of measles started coming in heavily, especially after processing toxic old meats, like from sausage, hot dogs, stuff like that. That's mainly from that. Measles are mainly from they used to use a citric acid. Other times in history they used formaldehyde. And when you put that kind of substance, those kind of chemicals in luncheon meats, it'll cause a measles type detoxification eventually in your population. Yeah. Your kids are trying to detoxify before they enter puberty. Because if they go into puberty with those toxins in there, they won't reproduce. And we've got that problem now. There's the rate of impotency is tremendous. Tremendous.
Among young people.
Among young people. I went to Ohio to do a workshop last August after I left D.C. And it was after I left D.C. And I had 3 couples waiting for me there as soon as I got there to tell me that they had, one couple had tried for 10 years to have a baby, another couple for 7 years, and another couple 5 years, and they all knew each other. And one went on the diet, got pregnant in 30 days on the diet. The other one went into it when she found out about it from her couple of friends. They did it, got pregnant within 30 days. Third couple did too. All 3 couples got pregnant with just 30 days on the diet. They've been trying for years. One of them spent $26,000 on fertility clinics. And then all he needed was a good diet.
Wow.
That's simple. Do you have a question, Bruno? You have to give me one. You're most important. We got too many people.
It's about, I eat a lot of meat now, and sometimes I don't go to raw food anymore, like meat. And I buy Costco, and sometimes I buy sauce. And I eat a lot, like 3 pounds a day. And
pasteurized butter? Yeah. Well, it's like this. If you buy Costco meats, let's say you're going to get a third of the nutrient value that you will from good organic grass-fed beef. Okay, so you're eating a lot more, you're spending just as much money, so I don't get the point. If you believe Costco, more power to you. I said, if you believe Costco really gets organic meat, more power to you. I don't care what it says. Don't believe everything you read. Whole Foods, all natural beef. So when I investigated what they fed, their cows, I called their office in Texas and said, what are you feeding your cows? You say it's all natural. What are you feeding them? Well, we're feeding them all, grains and they're grazing, stuff like that. And I said, okay, but what are you feeding them? Are you feeding them GMO corn? Are you feeding them, soy? What are you feeding them? Well, we don't know that. You have to go to the ranches. So I went to the person who's in charge of getting all the ranchers together, organizing to have the contract for Whole Foods, and they fed them 15% bakery waste, stale donuts. Called it all natural. So I called Whole Foods main office and I said, you're saying all natural. You can't say all natural. You're feeding them stale donuts that are boiled in oil. That is not natural for cows. But it's made out of their natural grain. And that's their reasoning and their rationale.
But it's made out of
It's made out of grain. Donuts are made out of natural grain. And cows can eat grain. That's their logic. Yeah, so you have to understand, you want to know whether it's really organic, you go check. You can't trust them. You have to go to the source. That doesn't mean they're organic. Organic means they're fed only organic food that's never been processed. But look what they feed. They say chicken, organic chicken. Like Rosie's all organic chicken. You can't feed chickens soy. They're fed 75 to 80% soy. Soy, only to feed chickens and humans, you have to heat and chemically process soy. Because raw soy will kill a human, and it will kill any kind of bird, any kind of fowl. So it has to be, Rosie. No, Rosie? Yeah, Rosie. Rosie. Not Rocky, Rosie. So Rosie feeds theirs processed soy that was organically grown. But once it's processed with a chemical and heat treated, it is no longer organic. And the FDA and the state of California doesn't come down on these people for their poor labeling. You've got to find out what's in the food.
If you travel, what do you do?
No, when I had no other choice, and not because I'm cheap and trying to save money, because you will never do that. If you've got good, best quality, you spend the money, because you're going to spend the same amount of money to get less quality, and you're going to usurp all your digestibilities and a lot of other nutrients in your body dealing with toxic food. But when I just visited my parents in Dayton, Ohio. And I got there on a night when I couldn't get any good grazed meat. Now, I've got lots of farmers there, good Amish farmers and Mennonite farmers there to supply me with dairy. But that night I needed meat. So I went into a regular supermarket and got Laura's all-natural beef. Now, I know that they feed them GMO corn. It's not the best thing. But still, most of the animals are grazed. I do the best I can. And I do the best I can. When I can get the best, I get the best. So you just have to consider.
Once you said it, when you go to a restaurant, they always have good
Restaurants always get your best cuts and the best quality of
They
meat.
shop at Costco, right?
Pardon?
They shop at Costco, most people there, right?
No, they don't. They would cost too much money. Some of your small family restaurants will buy from Costco, but not your good restaurant.
What kind of chicken is okay?
Rocky is okay. They only feed theirs 25% soy. It's still not the best, but it's the best we can do.
Whole Foods doesn't carry Rocky anymore.
They got their chicken.
They have, is Mary's?
Well, they got the whole chicken. They get the whole chicken. Pardon? Yeah. Well, when I bought hers for the first time, they were heavy in salt. Sharon called me with James yesterday and left a message, there's no salt. That's absolute bullshit. All of this is from the salt. They said they dip them in ice water. Well, what the hell do you think's in the ice water? It's a brine. It's full of salt. So, see, James doesn't know what he's talking about because he isn't into the food producing industry. He's just into buying and selling.
Why did she put it in? Did you do it without putting in the salt?
I don't know. Maybe she's Jewish. I don't know.
What about Mary's?
Pardon?
Mary's?
I don't know anything about
Don't
Mary's.
buy that anymore.
Pardon?
Don't buy that anymore.
I won't never buy her chicken again.
No, me neither. I know.
When you said olive, what do you mean olive?
I got a rash and dryness and burning here from the salt
Because you ate that chicken.
because I ate the chicken.
Which chicken is allergic to salt? I'm sorry, which chicken is that?
Most people are allergic to salt. I'm highly reactive to it.
So how do you buy it?
I buy the pieces which are rocky.
Oh, okay, that's...
But if you buy the whole chicken, that's Sharon's and it's full of, salt.
You can't change it?
Talk to him.
They don't believe me. Sharon denied that they were soaked in, that there was any salt in them. You can't tell me when they can't tell me there's no salt when I know there's salt.
You react to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have a question? Oh, you asked a question already. How about you?
Okay. First, I should say that all the eczema dry skin I had when I met you last April, it was food related.
Nothing to the food.
It's really wonderful not to have
Good.
that.
Congratulations.
And that's all it is. I don't, and I did put coconut oil on it for a while, and Tyrone oil, but then most of I need nothing now. If my lips get dry, I just eat some butter and it's gone.
Good. Great. Congratulations.
But what I also wanted to ask you, before you, I've had 3 surgeries on each knee. Originally it was a climbing accident, but they said trauma-induced, but chondromalacia patella, which I think is just arthritis and no cartilage left behind the patella.
Yeah.
So what can I do now? I'm still as active as I can be, but can I get back what it used to be?
It takes a while to rebuild that kind of tissue, especially after you have surgery, because they coat it with iodine or mercurochrome, which is liquid
But
mercury.
even before the surgery, I couldn't walk, so the surgery seemed to help by removing.
Well, because of your eczema, you had signs of Crohn's. When you have Crohn's and you eat too much, your gut will rip. You have leaky gut. It goes to the knees to digest. So then it starts eating away the digestive juices that are digesting this undigested food here are also eating your own tissue.
Will it grow back?
It can. It depends on how much mercury and iodine they coated on you during the surgeries. Could be permanent. Could damage the RNA and DNA and they won't reproduce properly.
So what should I be eating if there is a chance to?
Well, bone marrow is good, sperm is good, anything with natural high,
And I came in and you were talking about bone marrow, and we said, how do you eat bone marrow? Just buy the bones that I get.
you buy the bones. Do you go to Rawson? Okay, there's a box in there with bones in them, and you just scoop it out and eat it. If you leave it to room temperature, it'll be very soft like butter. Otherwise, it's just very hard like animal fat. Yeah, you eat it. Lots of stem cells in it. And you can take it and rub it on the knees with some coconut cream and that'll help too.
What if it's been
Yeah.
frozen? A lot of the stores freeze the marrow bones.
Well, yeah, you have to find somebody source like, our Amish farmers don't freeze it for us. And also North Star bison. You can get it from them. You just say, I want it unfrozen.
So all this osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, it's all a similar thing?
Well, your body's usually digesting something it could be your own cells because your lymph system isn't working. It could be digesting your own cartilage cell, damaged cartilage cells.
So with arthritis, could you put bone marrow on your hands?
But also, tomatoes and chicken are good to eat together for arthritis and rheumatism, things like that. I've got those remedies in the book.
Douglas Farmer has chicken cutting. Amos Miller, isn't that chicken okay?
Yeah, it's great, but I can't get Jim to order it. He thinks Sharon's is God's gift, but obviously he doesn't eat it. Well, he loves salt, and he eats salt. He eats sea salt, sea water, so he may not even taste the difference. So he's not a good... And you see all that bloating in James's skin,
Is that a myth about gluten and ligaments?
Pardon?
Like gluten and ligament, like deficiency, or like how the ligaments break down? Is that a myth being associated with eating gluten?
Well, that depends on if the gluten is passing out in a way that will go to the joints. All depends upon the individual. But that can definitely be a problem.
My girlfriend, they gave her surgery because of her knees, and she swears it was because she was fed so much gluten and it created something in her intestinal tract. So they did a poor surgery on her knees, and it just messed her up. So she's kind of had that same.
There's so many reasons for it. There's so many reasons. And of course, gluten can be part of it, the reason.
You don't do things. You're all raw.
Oh, yeah. There's no isolated gluten anywhere. In fact, if you're going to eat grains once in a while in bread, you're getting gluten in it.
Right.
But I say tons of raw butter, or avocado, or some raw fat with that bread. Pardon?
Millet and quinoa, you don't do anything like that.
I don't eat cooked grains, except, when I'm in Asia and I don't have milk for a while, or dairy products enough, like cream, I take my butter with me, but I get very hungry. So the only way I can curb that constant craving to eat, I can eat 5-6 pounds of meat a day and still be unsatisfied because I don't get cream. And cream is very important for my body. So I will eat about a third, a cup of cooked rice with lots of butter, and that'll alleviate a lot of that digestive juices that's looking for something to eat. But I may have a total of a cup a year, only in a situation like that. Otherwise, I don't touch it. Do you have questions?
Detoxification cycles of weight gain and weight loss. And I've noticed for me the weight gain cycle is no problem, but the weight loss portion alternates between the green juice and the meats. Just back and forth, and then at the end of the day, you can, before you go to sleep, you can have something, some shake or something. But I find that I just don't feel satiated from that combination. It is very hard to lose the weight like that. Just
You're not
because I
supposed to
hungry.
feel satiated. You're supposed to be hungry all the time. But the only reason I put that weight loss thing in there, I like people to gain the fat ideally for 2.5 years and leave it on for 2.5 years and then go on the weight loss. See, a lot of people are afraid of fat. They're absolutely paranoid of fat. So if they see that every 6 months they can gain and lose and they're not getting huge, then they don't worry about it. So after a few times, a year goes by, they've done it twice, then they don't worry about gaining a lot of fat and holding it for a year or two, and then they don't worry about it anymore. Yeah, being a few pounds, because then they know they can get rid of the fat if they will discipline themselves to do the weight loss.
So what do you recommend for people who are into bodybuilding and fitness and need to have a lower percent body fat?
That's a low percent body fat is not good for weightlifting. You have to have a high amount of fat in the muscles to keep them from going into cramping and stiffness. Like I said, you came in late.
Yes.
Yeah, I talked about that extensively. Lactic acid building crystals and making lesions in the muscles. That's why a lot of your bodybuilders and weightlifters don't have a lot of flexibility because it causes scar tissue to build up in the muscles. So you need lots of fat tissues.
Do you find that the weight loss cycle lasts for? How long would you have to do that for, alternating between green juice?
It all depends upon the individual.
Because I find if I eat too much fat, like literally I can gain 3 pounds in 2 days, and because I'm so small, it's very, just right away. But the weight loss part, the satiation's not there, so it's hard to really keep it up for days on end with the green juice and the meat.
Well, what you do is just do a day of regular eating and 3, 4, 5 days of the, just alternating. I meant it to be slow loss, because your body needs the fat or else it wouldn't be gaining it quickly. It wouldn't hold on to it. It needs it inside in the tissues.
I see. But after you've gained enough and whatever, you detoxify, then your body will actually process the fat and you'll lose it. It doesn't.
There's so much you miss by coming late. I talked about, raw fats being very small molecules. I'm 21% body fat. I look like I'm 10% an athlete, and I don't exercise. Haven't exercised since 1979, except for roller skating, once every 3 years on the beach and carrying my groceries once a week and pulling my luggage along, and that's about it, the exercise I do. I don't even walk, except into an airplane and out of the airports, and that's it. When you cook a fat, it swells 10 to 50 times its normal size. So you've got huge fat molecules in your body. So your body has to take all the small molecules and go in there and dissolve it and break them down, and it causes temporary swelling. And that swelling can last, as I told everybody else, can last 7 to 14, 16 years. Then you will be eternally thin but fat at the same time.
It's interesting because I noticed that I've only been following this. I used to be vegan before, and I just found myself getting unhealthy. I was raw vegan for a while, I got more unhealthy, and then I found that's how I got here. So I've been doing this now for maybe 3 months, and I noticed that I have gotten kind of puffy, just kind of, rounded out, and I actually am still the same body fat percent. I'm only 12% body fat, but I've actually gained a lot of weight, even though my body fat's not really going up that much, maybe 1%. It's very dense but puffy at the same time.
If you're only 12% body fat, probably 40% of your excess weight is water. So you don't have a fat problem. If you're 12%, you've got a fat deficiency problem. You've got a water retention problem. You need to stay away from water like the plague.
I did that when I first read your book, but I noticed I was just so thirsty all the time, and I started to drink too much milk, so I didn't get really fat.
Well, you sip it. See, the problem is everybody gulps. You see me when I'm taking it, you don't see me going glug, glug, glug. You see me keeping my lips together and drawing out like I'm suckling a nipple. I draw the milk through. So I drink very little milk compared to somebody who gulps it and glugs it. It makes a difference in how you utilize it. And you will bloat because your body needs that milk to help go in there and change the circumstance. If you're a vegetarian, you are very fat deficient because vegetable oils crystallize in the human body. They dehydrate in the human body. They do not stay fluid at the human body temperature. Herbivores have a body temperature 101 to 105 degrees. Vegetable oils remain solvent and soluble at that temperature, those temperatures. But at 98.6 and lower, it does not. Crystallizes hard. So you've got a lot of crystallized fat in your body from being a vegetarian. Probably a lot of it was cooked, even worse. So you're going to have a lot of bloating for a long time.
How's that going to end?
time. Your body just has to rebuild itself completely, has to completely remodel itself.
So just do the diet, and over time it will heal itself, basically.
Yeah.
There's nothing in particular you recommend eating. I know stay away from salt, that's for sure, but there's nothing particular you recommend eating a lot of, or it would help the process.
It's just time. That's all you do is wait for your body to do it. It's like, you want to build a mansion? You going to do it overnight? No, it's stages and a lot of help and a lot of processes. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I apologize. I haven't read your book, so I'm going to have to talk about it.
I'm sorry?
My question is, what do you see as a source of chemical sensitivities?
Chemical sensitivities means that you've got low mucus production in your body, and you've collected so many toxins that one more will break the camel's back. One more straw will break the camel's back. If somebody has collected way too many chemicals in their body, one more will take it over the hill.
So what causes low mucus?
Poor diet. Fat-free diet is one of the worst. So I have so many people on fat-free diet, something like 60% of the people have some type of allergy of some time in their life that gets worse and aggravated as they get older. So the way to build good mucus is to make milkshakes. Milkshakes to make a very good mucus, good sound mucus.
Don't you get runny noses and stuff after that?
Some people do, but they need it. It's part of the brain detoxifying.
So if you're really mucusy, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. You ever had sex with that mucus?
I detox good goodies.
Good for you. Good. Just remember, most of the poisons are in the brain. The brain and nervous system use most of your metallic minerals to transport light and conduct electricity. So almost all the toxic minerals go to the brain. We don't have big brains because we're smart. We have big brains because it's a garbage dump for heavy metals. And the brain gets larger, especially the brain started getting larger the more we started using metals in industry for the wheel, for jewelry, stuff like that. The brain got larger and larger. The brain remained small as long as we were hunter and gatherers. But when we started smelting metals, we started entering a lot of toxicity into the system. And the brain dumps out the sinuses in the mouth. Lots of mucus necessary to do that, to protect those mucous membranes. So if you got those good thick honkies, more protection.
Is it better to keep the mucus inside or throw it out?
Pardon?
But I have lots of mucus too. What do you do with the mucus? Better
You go.
You swallow it.
You swallow it, you're entering those toxins into your system. If you're a healthy individual and you just got some dust in there, and you created a lot of mucus to wash the dust out so it didn't get into the mucous membranes, swallowing it would be healthy. But most of the poisons leaving our brain are from canned foods, air pollution from your car exhaust and diesel fuel and stuff like that. Not a good thing. Do you have a question?
I do, Aajonus. Do you want me to do the sugar cube size of raw cheese with either butter or coconut cream?
Only if you were constipated?
Yeah, I need something. Either butter or coconut cream. But what I found is, and it's been working out great, I've had 3 big detoxes. It's worked out very well. It's called a chemical solvent. But the raw butter, for some reason, swells up my front gum line. I get an abscess. When I eat the coconut cream with the cheese, I don't have an issue or problem. Why is that?
Well, your body's probably using a lot of butter to get rid of, it has a particular molecular structure that helps get rid of Novocaine and xylocaine and any kind of injected dental chemical anesthetic.
Should I be doing butter with the cheese versus coconut cream?
Well, I would use a little of both so you're not going to have such a heavy detoxify.
A little of both?
If you do the heavy detoxification, you'll even get numb sometimes.
I can literally feel the toxins collecting in my, I can feel it.
It's all dental crap.
Yeah, I have a lot of dental.
Is there a way to gently detox from, I've just gotten tons of Novocaine from them to work all
you're going to have a good time.
What if you take
You're going to have good times. You're going to have abscesses and boils and everything coming out, unless you have another way to do it. Your body may invent some way.
So using just coconut cream is not enough, it sounds like. I need the butter with it. Okay.
Yeah, I would alternate one time with butter, one time with coconut cream.
Okay. Is one better than the other, or,
Doesn't matter. The cheese, the fat with the cheese is just to keep you from getting constipated.
Okay.
But, you came in a little late, right? Well, I said, if you use 3 tablespoons each of coconut cream, butter, and dairy cream, and a 1/4 teaspoon of honey, mix those together in a 4-ounce jelly jar, put it immerse it in a bowl of hot water till it gets a little above body temperature, like 101 degrees, and then shake it up again, put it in an enema bulb syringe, and then insert it in you before you go to sleep, hold it and maintain it, and then we'll lubricate the whole sigmoid colon, where most of the dryness occurs, because the body's soaking up all the E. coli digested matter at that point, with mainly your B vitamins and your proteins and fats digested to the right molecular structure. At that point where most 95%, 94% of constipation happens there for that reason. And if you put those fats in there, it will lubricate the sigmoid colon. They go up and feed the rest of the E. coli and benefit them. So then you won't even have to worry about eating the butter or the coconut cream with the cheese. If you want to resolve a problem, it's good to get like a tapeworm or something like that. I had constipation from the age of 3 years old, or probably 18 months after that tetanus shot that made me autistic. And up until 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, I did an experiment fermenting milk with some maca powder, which is a root from South America that has a lot of flavor and taste like Cheerios. And I was going to do it to help detoxify all the cereals that I lived on as a teenager and child, and donuts. So I fermented it over a little bit longer than I should have. It was so fermented that when I popped the top off the bottle, the alcohol actually burned my sinuses, and my eyes were red and, tearing for almost 24 hours. But I had 3 cups at a time, which was stupid. In a day, I should have, taken like a 1/4 cup a day or something like that. In a 24-hour period, I did 3 cups. So it caused me to have a tapeworm. And tapeworms do not live on intestinal tissue. They eat the food, excess sugars. They eat sugars. Only creatures in the world that get tapeworms are those that are fed cereals. That's why all the African children that get tapeworms are because when they get those AIDS, the health packages, these people who give these, help feed these people are making deals with General Foods and Purina for the worst discarded cereals so they can feed a lot of people. And it's not about quality, it's about the amount that they can feed these people. So they give them powdered milk, and we know by Pottinger's work with the powdered milk, it created the worst diseases and the most violence in the animals, in the cats. So they feed them this powdered milk with water in this cereal, this waste cereal that they can't even sell in this country. So they give to these children, and then you get tapeworms, because the tapeworms eat excess sugar to keep the intestines from dissolving. And we're told the tapeworm will eat all the protein. No, it doesn't eat the protein. It eats only high carbohydrate foods that get into the intestinal tract. So I had this tapeworm going to town in me, and then like 4 or 5, and I was so happy. My first parasite. I've been trying to eat parasites for 40 years, and I wasn't able to get a parasite, or 36 years at that time. Trying to get a parasite. So this is my first parasite. Because of chemotherapy and radiation, I was too toxic to breed and maintain parasites in my body. So I got my first parasite. About 5-6 days later, I had this craving for onion. So I sat down. Who sits down and eats a half of an onion? Just sits and eats it. I can't even take much onion in my food. But I sat down and ate a half an onion. Within 6 hours, I shat out 50 or 48 feet of tapeworm. And I happened to be in a hotel in Hanoi. And it was all hardwood floors. I was paying $12 for a hotel room. And it was all wood furniture, excellent quality, $12. The ceiling was, wood parquet, and the floor was wood real teak wood parquet, $12 a night. So I had to get this thing out of the toilet because I wanted to measure it, see how long it was. And a tapeworm its sections will shrivel up like a rice. In about 6 hours, a tapeworm noodle will look like a rice. Harvested dry hard rice. So I had to get it spread out quickly to measure. So I'm putting it gently along the floor, It took me about probably 20 minutes, so I knew it shrunk a few feet at that point, but I had about 47 feet of tapeworm, which is probably about 50 feet. So I was all upset with myself because it came out with the onion. Just shot out with the onion. So I was all upset, and then about 8 weeks later, and I had diarrhea. Not a lot of diarrhea, but when I had the movement every day, it was diarrhea. So it wasn't annoying. I didn't have to run to a toilet all the time. When I had it once a day, it was diarrhea. So about 6 weeks later, I noticed a noodle in the toilet again, and it's floating like a stingray, and that's, again, a section of a tapeworm. So I thought, oh my God, he lives! He lives in me doing work. And then I had him for about 6 weeks. I'd see segments every time I had a bowel movement. I've never been constipated since. Even on a raw diet, I was constipated with the first part of the fecal matter. When I was a child, I went every 3 to 5 days. So when it came out as big as my fist and as hard as granite, and it felt like granite. It was just sharp, and it ripped my rectum. So by the time I was 21 years old, 22 went on to a raw diet, my rectum was an inch thick with fibroids, scar tissue from ripping. And it would rip. I bled every time I went to the bathroom. Every time I had a bowel movement. And it continued on this diet. I could have 5-6 bowel movements a day, but the first one in the day, the first part of it was hard as granite again, always. When I had that tapeworm, ever since the tapeworm, everything is smooth. Don't get ripped, don't bleed anymore. I love that tapeworm. I love that tapeworm. So, eventually, Pardon? No. You'll know when you have hemorrhoids. No, usually the rectum splits, because there's not enough elasticity in it. If it's all scar tissue, there's no elasticity, or very little elasticity. Yes? Okay.
Last December, I had a brain detox, and a month after it was over, the couple of benefits I had was I was much happier, and I was also in dialogue with people. I was very spontaneous and used good English, but it went away after a month and a half, a month or so. And what could be the reason for that?
Well, you go on and off the diet. So when you go on it, your body starts working very well. Then when it gets to the point where it feels balanced, it starts detoxifying.
Okay.
And then when you're detoxifying, it's like closing, let's say you've got a 6-lane highway, and you go through a detox, and you cut it down to 2 lanes.
So just stay on the
Yeah.
diet.
So you have reduced mental function.
I thought that was the reason.
So you stay on the diet a long time like me, and your brain won't shut off.
So how about all these people that are not doing this diet, but they're very healthy and they're very spontaneous? Why they are so they don't use it?
It's like asking if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass when he jumped. It just is, you know? And you can't compare yourself with people who have that quality because it makes no sense.
I always trying to say that people could have a brain and use it. You go through colleges and
I know. But look at all the doctors. Are they wise?
No.
Okay, they're pretty stupid, actually. They're very stupid. They're not only ignorant, they're stupid. I was with my father. My father had a stroke in December, so he doesn't function very well. So I was just with him for 5 days, and he would go to say something. It was like he lost his thought and couldn't think of what to say or couldn't find the words. And it usually occurred after he drank something. So after about a day and a half, I realized that every time he drank a fluid, it was a very thick stuff like aloe vera juice, but it was made with glycerin. So they put glycerin in everything so he wouldn't choke on fluids. So apple juice with glycerin in it, everything had glycerin in it that he drank. And within 10 minutes of drinking it, he would go stupid. So I told the hospital, oh, no, it's okay. I said, listen, I'm a biochemist. So I know what's happening. Your doctors come in and prescribe and they don't stay 10 minutes with a patient. They have no idea what that patient's wrong with that patient. They just look at their figures on a chart. They don't know what's going on with the patient. They've got these measurements that they look at, the blood tests, analysis, urine analysis, and they look at figures. They're not looking at the patient. That is not only ignorance, that is stupidity. So it took me a day and a half to get them to stop it. And I was very nice about it. I said, look, this is what's happening. I think you should take him off of it. By the evening, and they didn't stop, I said, I know it is. I've observed it, so you need to take him off of it. The next day, he was still having it. I said, I'm not asking you anymore. I'm demanding that you take him off of any kind of a fluid. If he chokes a little bit, you just stop feeding him for a few minutes and let him get through it. But don't feed him any of that stuff anymore, and I mean it. Of course, that night, they took him off of it. The next day, he had no dumbness. He didn't go into that stupor. We had a conversation the whole day. A whole day. Thank God for the first time in 25 years, he agreed to drink raw milkshakes.
Oh, wow.
So that really helped. I mean, that in 1979, 80, 81, I got him to eat raw eggs with orange juice and eat olive oil and cheeses along with my mother. So they did it for about 10 years and didn't do it since. So getting my father to do it was, because I just asked him, I said, I'm only going to ask you this once, and I'm only going to offer once. Do you want me to help you? I can give you some raw milk. I can make you raw milkshakes, which will help. When I went there, he was white as her top there. And he had 4 major sores that looked cancerous, but they weren't going to treat him because he had just had a stroke, and they weren't going to take a chance on him having another stroke, so they weren't going to treat these cancer-like abrasions on his face. In 4 days of milkshake, his color was completely back, and all 4 sores had completely cleared.
Wow.
Nobody, not even scabs. That's because he was raised on raw milk on a farm.
Sure.
He reacts very well, quickly, to good foods.
So then that diet is great for a head trauma that we've had.
Lots of milkshakes and fish, but there was no way I was going to get fish into him at that point. But I was able to get milkshakes into him. And he drank every bit of it. And he liked it. It was a shocker for me. Do you have a question? Yeah, you got your question answered.
Okay. I'm looking at like massage, but basically foot, reflexology. What are like? I've read certain things that you said, and I've also listened to. I guess the last time we had we were talking about getting coconut oil and massages that you're getting from people in Thailand. So, but I'm closely affiliated with people that actually run a reflexology massage Thai place, and I wanted to see.
I'm not into Thai massage.
Uh-huh.
I tell them how I want a massage done, and it's always gentle.
Right, I got that from your book for sure.
Yeah.
So, but like as far as because I know they don't want the lacerations or whatever, the excessive manipulation.
It will cause terrible bruising and damage in the body. Just remember that, like a therapy called magnetic touch, all they're doing is touching a few points at the same time. They'll pick one particular point and they'll hit those points. And I had them experiment with me for a 3-day period because I couldn't believe the changes that were going on in the way it made me feel just by hitting those certain points. It's called magnetic touch. And their center is in Phoenix, Arizona. And they have a video you can watch. That was probably the most effective that I've seen. But when I can get it, I like to be touched because I'm so mental. Everything I do is in the mental plane. I don't get to act anymore. I don't get to paint anymore. So I like sensuality. So just for the sheer enjoyment of being touched, I like to be massaged very gently and lightly with coconut cream.
Right, okay, but just as far as reflexology itself, because that particular science, right?
Yes, but reflexology is fine, but not the digging in that reflexology does.
Right. But then as far as just like the points themselves, just as far as
they're fine. Yeah, touch them.
Right.
Barely massage the area. That does all the electrical stimulation, brings the blood in. But let's say you have what they call a bone spur or a crystal in a particular area, and you go in and break it. You're going to be lacerating and cutting up tissue. You just need some vinegar. Vinegar in your feet. Massage it in your feet with a little coconut cream. Drink some vinegar, little small amounts, to start breaking up those crystals. The way to do it. Pardon?
That would work for gout as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about fascia massage?
I don't know fascia massage.
It's just where they go in and they start with their hands closed and they press and they let they wait till your muscle relaxes and then the muscle.
It depends on how much pressure they put on it. They cut off circulation.
You're barely being touched.
That's good. Yeah. Anything that's soft and light is nice.
When you say vinegar, it means apple cider vinegar.
Raw apple cider vinegar, yeah. Raw unpasteurized apple cider vinegar. Unpasteurized. Yeah. Raw unpasteurized.
What about in reflexology, like a certain point of the foot equals a certain point of the body? Do you think that's valid?
Well, you've got nerves running all through that can stimulate the nerves all the way through that point. So definitely. It works that way. Okay, back there. Do you have a question? Yes.
Okay. I came in late on all of this. What information do you have about fibroids, the cause and how to get rid of that?
Fibroids are caused by a collection of dead cells or tumors. It can be from something you're discharging. You're talking about vaginal fibroids? Uterine fibroids. You're discarding something through that tissue that's damaging cells in that area. And the cells can't dissolve. The dead cells don't get dissolved. So the dead cells are mummified and they retain in that area. So they're tumors. Fibroids are tumors. Yes, they're collection of dead cells with no cancer cells.
So what do you suggest for diet?
Pardon?
What do you suggest to remove that from the body?
Like I said in the book, anything that removes scar tissue, coconut oil, coconut cream, olive oil, flax oil, things like that. Internally, yeah, eat them with if you're eating, a combination of 1 tablespoon of flax oil or olive oil with some coconut cream, that's a better type of solvent to remove That, or you could have it with avocado, a tablespoon of flax, or olive oil with avocado. That's also a fairly good cleanser. Coconut cream is always your best, because the coconut cream, like the avocado, has water-soluble fats and vitamins, as well as oil-soluble. In your olive oil and flax oil, it's only your oil-soluble fats and vitamins. So it's a very restricted, solvent that could be produced for that. Coconut oil is, again, it doesn't have the water-soluble fats and vitamins. And it isn't as caustic as the olive oil and flax oil. So it won't break down scar tissue as easily. Yeah.
The program on Barbara Walters they were talking about stem cells and...
You're not talking about the fibroids?
No.
Okay, we'll get back to stories later, because we're running way behind. Yes?
Yeah, I'm having a little trouble with the crossover of eating every 3-4 hours, plus I'm doing yoga twice a day, pretty strenuous, workout for at least an hour, sometimes 2. And I'm not supposed to eat like 3 hours before yoga. So
who says? That's if you're eating cooked foods. That's not if you're eating raw food.
Okay, that's what I wanted to find out.
Yeah, 40 minutes before, if you want to, make sure that everything is not interfering with digestion.
What's better, like an egg or an 8 ounces of milk, 16 ounces of milk?
Depends on what you want to achieve in your yoga.
It doesn't matter. I just want to have the food in me. What I eat before I eat after, does it matter?
It depends on what you want to achieve. Is it to create a better, more flexible body, or is it for meditation?
A little bit of both.
Okay, then eat fish with something, eggs, or some butter, lubrication formula, and fish.
Most of the time, it's like I'm getting up and I've been sleeping for 3 hours or 4 hours. And if I have, I'm afraid to have an egg or 2 like I used to before I started doing yoga, because I might be getting up in another hour and doing my yoga.
Yeah.
So then sometimes I'm done with my yoga and I realize it's been 6 or 7 hours since I've eaten. So maybe if I ate, so you're saying I can eat like an egg an hour before my yoga practice, or 40 minutes before my yoga practice?
No, because remember, an egg digests in 23 minutes. It only uses 3 inches on the intestines, so you're going to be very hungry with just an egg.
I'm thinking of like a milk or an egg, really.
Well, milk, if you're having a milkshake, that's fine, but if you really want a meditative state where you can transcend something, lubrication formula with some fish. Help flexibility, it'll help everything.
And if you're saying how much before I begin my practice to be all day?
40 minutes.
40 minutes and it'll be completely digested.
Not completely, enough to keep you from getting hungry for 2-3 hours and do the job.
Okay, and it's the same thing with have a milkshake.
But it'll be out of the stomach. That's the point. It'll be out of the stomach, and duodenum is the second part of the stomach. The stomach and duodenum, the first chamber of the stomach and duodenum are the one stomach. 2 compartments of the one stomach. It'll be completely out of the stomach, including the duodenum, within 40 minutes. That meal.
Whether it's the whole milkshake or the lubrication.
With the fish, yes.
Now, what if I just have a lubrication? Mostly I'm having chicken around the house right now.
Okay, then chicken and the lube formula.
Chicken and lube formula about 40 minutes before
that way you won't get hungry during your whole exercise. You'll be able to stay focused.
I found that egg gave me a lot of energy. I took eggs like a raw egg 15 minutes before, and I felt a big difference.
Yeah, it will, because remember, the egg digests in 23 minutes. 23 minutes. All that protein and fats are available instantly with very little digestion, very little digestive effort.
When is it out of the first stomach, the egg?
Pardon?
When is the egg out of the first stomach? So can I eat like an egg 10 minutes before I do a workout?
Yeah, absolutely.
10 minutes before? Because it's out of the first stomach and not fast.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Completely through the system.
It holds up in the duodenum a little bit longer because of the bile dumping in to use the egg yolk. But that's still not very long. Probably 5 minutes it's left the stomach. Takes very little hydrochloric acid because all the egg white is already liquid.
But you make 5 minutes before and that strenuous hour-long workout.
Absolutely. But you're going to get hungry. You're going to get hungry with only an egg.
I get maybe a little tired, but I never experience hunger.
Okay, well, you've got enough weight on you, so that's good. Yeah. It's probably okay. Do you have a question, Louis?
Yeah. Regarding, water machines out there.
What kind of water machines?
Filtration water machines. There's one out there that I'm told that the ideal pH for water is 7.3. Favoring alkalinity, and there's at least one machine out there that not only filters out the chemicals, but keeps it at this ideal alkalinity. And with all the bottles that he's tested, they don't meet his criteria for the ideal alkalinity. So the quick question is a good glass bottle of water preferable to any of the filtration machines out there?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What water do you know that animals drink that's alkaline? They drink. And what water do you know that's alkaline that animals drink? Animals drink out of ponds with heavy algae. All of it's acidic.
So what do you do then?
There's no if you have an alkaline environment, you're not going to have any living thing in it. Not many living things in it.
So the quick answer is the natural waters that we get, they're not supposed to have that high in pH.
Exactly. You have your vegetable juices, which carries other vitamins and enzymes with those alkalinizing substances, so they don't do damage. Not supposed to be drinking very much water anyway.
I see. Thank you.
Anybody have any butter? Sometimes when I talk,
There's nut butter.
you just need just a nut butter. Where?
Oh, I made some. It's up there.
Oh, you have some. Oh, I see.
I don't know if there's any left.
Oh, this is nut butter. That'll help. There we go. No, there's enough to lubricate that throat. Okay. John, do you have a question?
Yes. What do you recommend to handle a heel spur that's been going on for quite some time?
Well, a heel spur is a crystallized growth on the bone of the heel. The vinegar, I talked about having a little bit of vinegar, maybe twice a day. A big guy like you use probably a teaspoon a day, a third of a teaspoon at a time, like I said earlier. You need vegetable juice.
Okay.
And spread it out. And with you on your feet, if you're doing massage or your construction stuff, you're pretty much on your feet, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to be working that area. Just find yourself going like this. Get the circulation going past the heel into the foot. And also you can massage. Take some vinegar, like a half of a teaspoon of vinegar with 2 tablespoons of coconut cream, and rub it into your heel at night before you go to sleep. That'll help dissolve the crystals.
Will that work for calluses also?
Well, the calluses are cells. It's not just minerals, crystals. So it's not the same. And you can dry the skin out and cause it to ulcerate and split and crack if you use vinegar like that on it.
Does half a teaspoon?
Better just use coconut cream for calluses. Yeah. Pardon?
So that was half a teaspoon vinegar and 1
No.
teaspoon
A third of a teaspoon of vinegar with each of your juices, 3 a day. Third of a teaspoon of vinegar and each juice of 3 juices in a day. So you're having a full teaspoon a day of vinegar.
Okay, but externally, as a massage cream.
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah.
It's 1 tablespoon of coconut cream to 1/2 teaspoon vinegar.
Correct.
Okay, and if the more massage you do, the more would break it up?
No, more is absorbed into that into the heel.
Okay, so like heavy massage or grinding with a golf ball, stuff like that?
No, that won't help it more. You just need to make sure that you're gentle with, and just keep working it in until it dries and dries and dries. Each time it dries, it's absorbed into the skin. Just put more on that area. The more localized to where the spur is, the more it will get into that area. It'll work its way into the bone. You have a question, Joe?
I'll go with Parkinson's.
Parkinson's?
Yeah, that one's from John.
Is he getting
No, a lot of clients.
Oh, Parkinson's is a disease of dryness of the nerves. It's like a mild version of MS. The lubrication formula is very important. If anybody was late, and they didn't pay, just put your $25 in Lewis's hand here. Okay, before you leave. Parkinson's lubrication formula, moisturizing formula, very important for resolving that. Your white meats, remember white is a category, not a color. So any fish, any fowl is good for that. Eating it with moisturizing formula, lubrication formula. Also, yoga, slowly done, is important to help rebuild and prevent Parkinson's from... Well, the yoga in slowly done is to make sure that you're getting circulation and those areas are stretched to get into those nerves that are deeply rooted.
Tai Chi also?
Pardon?
Tai Chi also? They've actually done studies.
Yeah, that's fine. Tai Chi is good.
They've done some studies about how it helps to contain it.
Yep. Well, it's just getting circulation into those areas, but the dryness prevents it. So you can break up that dryness. Even in a lubrication formula, you could add about a quarter of a teaspoon of vinegar to help dissolve any crystals that might be in those passages. Because mineral buildups, they have a problem and have some degree of influence in Parkinson's and any kind of palsy. Yes?
I had a question about the use of the trampoline, because it hasn't been talked about very much because it is jumping up and down.
Let me get to everybody else.
Oh, I thought you got everybody.
No, I'm still over here.
Oh, okay.
I just said that because it looked like people were going to leave.
Oh. Can I ask a clarification of something you already
Yes,
brought up?
that's
about
fine.
mold. You said mold helps dissolve minerals.
Mold, yes. Gangrene helps dissolve animal tissue. Yeasts help dissolve cells that have been damaged or highly built on sugar products. So those yeast eat those particular kinds of cells.
What if you're in a house that has mold?
That's a dangerous mold. That's a mold that's living on, well, if it's in stone, if it's a mold in stone and it's in natural wood, that's fine. If it's a mold on... Oh, thank you, sweetheart. JC. Thank you. So molds in a house like black mold that grows in building material that is not natural, that's very toxic to the system.
And what do you take to detox that?
It's not an easy one. Berries, if you made a mixture of like blueberries, blackberries, boysenberries, even dark mulberries, and coconut cream with lime juice and about a quarter to a third teaspoon of vinegar. That will help destroy molds. Just remember, an antifungal, a natural antibacterial antifungal that shouldn't be used too often, but you can use to destroy even toxic molds that get into the body, is lime juice. Most of the time you get rid of toxic penicillin out of the body, because penicillin grows in the body, and the penicillin is from grains and it belongs in the bird community, not the human community. And when they sterilize it for injection, it damages the RNA and DNA to have it go into hibernation as it's supposed to. So penicillin will always live in your body, always live actively. So the only way you can destroy it is by mixing a particular ratio of these ingredients, but it depends upon your body weight and size. If you're about 100 pounds, you could have 3 tablespoons each of lime juice, coconut cream, and honey, and a teaspoon of lemon juice. If you are 150 pounds, could be 4 to 4.5 tablespoons of coconut cream, lime juice, and honey, and about 1.5 teaspoons of lemon juice. Anyway, you mix that together, blend it together, and then you pour it into, depending upon your size, if it's a small amount of ratio of 3 of each, 3 tablespoons of each. 3 tablespoons of each. 3 tablespoons of each. You use about 2 ounces of naturally sparkling mineral water. If you're using 4.5 tablespoons of each, you'd use 2.5 to 3 ounces of naturally sparkling water. You pour that ingredients into the water, not the water into the ingredients. Chemically, that's very important. It will foam up like a float. It's delicious, but do not suck it down. Drink it slowly. Otherwise, it's going to rush into the kidneys and the bladder. And you need it to permeate to the intestines and into the brain. Most of it lives in the intestines and brain when I see it in the body. And I see it in 9 out of 10 people. It's rampant. Penicillin is running rampant in the body. But house molds, you need some kind of a heavy metal binder along with it, like the berries, the dark berries. Okay, do you have a question?
I do. Oh, regarding some teeth of mine, I have sensitive teeth, and I had a root canal on one of them. And when I get tired, I notice the teeth throb. Or when I'm, they throb.
Yeah, it's trying to clean out the circulation.
And when I brush the sides of the teeth, it's sensitive, and I really don't want to go for a cleaning. I dread it.
Don't just use that, the vinegar, the coconut cream, and clay.
Okay.
Yeah, and that'll clean them. Also, eat cheese regularly. Every hour a little piece of cheese. That'll help you make sure that you're using the minerals from the cheese to bind with the poison, and you're not using the minerals in the food.
So should I wait to go to the dentist for the cleaning?
I wouldn't go for a cleaning. You just use your vinegar and
well, every
clay.
6 months I go for a cleaning.
Not necessary if you're using the vinegar, clay, and coconut cream.
Okay.
It gets it deep down in there. Like I said, the clay carries the coconut cream and the vinegar deep into the gums, and it dissolves the plaque, so you don't have to have some metal instrument going there or cutting and ripping your gums apart.
How often do you do that?
Do it every day if you want.
Instead of toothpaste?
Yeah, that is toothpaste. Yeah.
So you're saying hold
Some people build a lot of plaque. If you don't build a lot of plaque, you don't need vinegar very often.
So when should people go to the dentist for a cleaning then?
Never.
Never?
Never.
Never
go to a dentist for a cleaning.
No?
Not necessary if you use that formula.
Now do it with a water pick or with but you said a toothbrush before. What about a water pick with that stuff?
Water, well, if you've got the clay up in there and you want to wash it out and you're afraid it's not coming out on its own, then use a water pick to flush it out. But let it do its work for at least 12 hours.
Good clay. Okay, so that's sensitivity.
No, you've got clay, the vinegar, and the coconut cream together, the mixture. Dip your toothbrush in there and just go to town. And the clay will, as you're brushing, the clay will move up into the gum, and then it carries with it the coconut cream and vinegar, which dissolves the plaque.
Okay, Aajonus, regarding tiredness and sensitivity, is there some relationship?
Anytime you get tired, the body's losing its nutrients on activity, on lactic acid and stuff like that. It's time to take a nap.
Okay.
It just reboosts
So I
the
feel
body.
it on those 2 teeth.
Yeah. Well, you got toxicity there.
Okay.
So that's part of cleansing.
Okay.
Just remember, the more you stay awake, the more you're going to detoxify. 90% of healing happens in the sleep state. So if you're not sleeping, you're not healing. You're going to be detoxing constantly.
On this diet.
Anytime, any diet.
Anytime?
Yeah.
So what is it when your gums bleed? What is that? Is that the same as, is that
That's the heavy metals passing down and preventing blood clotting, using up the K and U. So you can eat, some green cabbage juice to help give you enough vitamin K to clot. But that's heavy metals leaving the brain. Mercury, lead, thallium from the brain. Even aluminum prevents healing. So it causes bleeding. Do you have a question?
I do. I wanted to ask about sinus infections because I've looked at the book and there's all kinds of stuff that I sort of threw together to try and deal with it, but it's from colds and this and that, and I wonder if there's anything specific that you have.
Are you
I
having
know
a
it's good
sinus
thing.
infection or are you having a detox from the brain?
Well, that's what I think it is.
If it's bleeding from the, if it's sinus infection, it would be bleeding out the nose.
Okay, it's not bleeding.
No, then you're detoxing from the brain.
Okay.
You
And
need a lot of mucus, a lot of milkshakes.
milkshakes. But okay, which quote unquote makes it worse because
No,
that-
it
that-
doesn't make it worse. If you're bleeding, you've got a sinus infection.
Oh, I see. But I mean, the milkshakes
Causes more mucus. Now,
Exactly.
it doesn't cause mucus. Your body will build it.
Oh, okay.
Mucus with it if it needs it.
Okay.
I drink milkshakes all the time, and I have very little mucus because I don't need it. But there are times when I need it, and then I drink the milkshakes when I need it, and it does build the mucus.
So then you end up with more discharge, which is what you want.
That's exactly what you
Right.
want.
Yeah. It's exactly okay. So
Yeah.
that's what you want.
Mhm.
So
What
when
about
you
saltwater flushes for your
Very bad. Dries out and causes a loss of vitamin K and U and causes bleeding. Nosebleeds. Flushing your nose will cause nosebleeds. The salt.
Well, how about stuffing stuff in there like coconut cream or something?
What about
Yeah, it's okay. It's going to burn a little bit.
so then
Good or bad?
The best thing to do is let some water sit until it's get green and algae's growing in the jar, and then rinse with that kind of water.
say that again?
You let water sit in a jar until it starts turning algae.
Oh,
You know, it could take months to do that, but if you got a jar of it, then you can just, flush it
so
sometime.
if a pond in the backyard that's got algae in it. I
There
can
you
use
go.
that.
You can go snort that water.
What's that do?
Okay. So,
Pardon?
Why do you do that?
The microbes in it, it's got sea monkeys,
Right.
and they are very good for healing and sealing the mucous membranes. And the algae also will help break down and eat any toxic mineral in the water and break it down to a non-caustic substance.
You didn't tell me that before.
You never told me you were snorting with salt water.
That's what the doctor told me.
Well,
Doctor, if you want to know about health, do you go to the guy flipping hamburgers at McDonald's to find out how to get rich, or do you go to Donald Trump? If you want to know something about health, you don't go to a doctor. They know nothing about health. Doctors know disease and drugs, period. That's all they know. They know nothing about health. They do not study health.
Aajonus, you said algae will break down what? What was the word you said?
Any toxic minerals that are in the water, they'll dry out the sinus,
Okay.
like the salt
What
water.
is the website for the Primal Diet Friends?
Oh, you want to go ahead and say that?
Yeah, I got it written down here. It's this long, complicated website, which you'll have your pen and paper. http://primaldiet.ning.
hold on.
Pretty fast.
It's better that you tell them to go to a website and find it.
Okay, you know when I get home, I'm going to buy from GoDaddy. I think I'll buy PrimalDietFriends.com is available. And then I'll just
Okay, they can just go onto it.
Everybody's invited right now. It's open. Anybody?
But say the first part again.
It's called Primal Diet Friends, and the platform is ning.com.
You go to ning.com and search for it, you'll find it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Primal Diet Friends, yeah, it's a social site. You put up your picture, history, talk to people, and stuff like that.
A lot of people have been saying, how can I meet somebody on the diet? Well, that's how you can do it.
Primal Diet Friends?
Yeah.
Can I ask one clarification?
The name of the thing is primaldiet.ning.com.
Hey, Aajonus, quick clarification. Earlier you said you do the pineapple mixture only if you're doing the lymph, or also for the regular bath? Or just on the lymph?
No, only for the long lymphatic bath.
Okay.
And that doesn't have honey in it.
No.
It doesn't need it. It's sweet already with the pineapple. You don't need the honey, but it's okay. You can use honey in that one if you want.
Just a clarification about the lime juice.
Uh-huh.
A couple times you mentioned how powerful it can be in that and vinegar. What about ceviche? Does that have so much lime?
No, that's mainly lemon.
So lemon?
Lemon, remember, lemon is not an antibacterial. Lemon produces bacteria. That's how you can marinate stuff in it. It breaks the tissue down. It causes fermentation. Lime juice prevents fermentation. There's a big difference. Lemon and lime are not the same.
Also, ceviche has salt.
Okay, does the dog have a question? It's a very old primal dieter.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I didn't get a question. I really didn't hear.
I talked to you several times, but okay. Do you want to make an announcement? Kathy wants to make an announcement.
Next Saturday, we're going to be in the 3rd Street Promenade. Since it's Earth Day, the Earth is one of what we planet we're on now.
So what's
Maybe you are. We're going to be with these chemical sprays that we're doing in the skies. We had a big Friday, which was, wait a minute. Yeah, it was Friday. They did have these chemical spraying. They do it every few days. I don't know how they work it in.
But anyway, there's a demonstration about.
Yeah, we're going to be spraying. We're going to be spreading the word out at the 3rd Street Promenade at 11 o'clock. That's in Santa Monica. We've got stickers. We've got flyers, and we're going to take names of anybody that wants to help spread the word. Because through spreading the word, there's a way that we can stop this pounding of our atmosphere with chemicals, which are not kind to the body. Just as barium, aluminum,
All kinds of toxicity.
Yeah.
Also,
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It's also May 10th, we're having a booth. Anybody's free to pick up any of the flyers.
Okay. On Tuesday, on the 15th, anybody wants to go up to Sacramento, there's a Senate hearing on raw milk.
I'll be there.
So I've already got my ticket, a week ago. So I'm definitely going to be there. And they're going to let a lot of people speak, I understand. You only get 2 minutes, so make sure what you have to say is powerful, short and sweet.
Also,
And what you do is say, milk makes me feel so-and-so. When I don't have the raw milk, I get sick or I get ill. I don't feel as well. And this isn't about a problem or a psychological or any kind of thing like that. It is a true experience. I'm not an ignorant person. And if you say that, they have to say, okay, this person is fairly aware.
Right?
Okay?
On the 15th, right?
On the 15th, yes. Now they say that the hearing on it's going to start at 3 o'clock and go as late as 9 o'clock or later. I know those senators going to sit around that late. So I'm going to show up about noon.
Aajonus,
Yes.
I brought some of these if anybody's interested in
Oh,
them.
yes. Jill and John Fox from Nevada City made this several years ago.
It's a little outdated.
It's a very good primal diet recipe. It tells you how to make things, how to use, how to blend, how to do all that good stuff. They let me critique it and tell them what do they needed to do to make it my approval, so it meets my approval in all ways.
How do you get the
Okay.
DVD?
I have them right here.
You have some right here if you want to purchase
How
them.
much are they?
$20 for today, and I paid the tax.
Can I also say, I went to the Justice, Peace, and Freedom Conference last weekend over in Newport Beach. We discussed that's a real ID, and everybody has looked at it. They want and there's so many states that have rejected it. California has not rejected it. I urge everyone to please make an effort to do something, spread the word, spread either flyers or reject this, please.
But only 15 states have rejected it. We need a lot more states.
I have on the Real ID, I have what's called a declaration to oppose the Real ID, which will be submitted to Sacramento about April 16th. So if anybody wants to add their name to the list,
I've already done it online, so you can do it online.